Yo, it's your boy Ryan, Northwest Sports Fanatics, back at you with a new video. Today is Sunday, December 7th, 2025, with your boy Ryan and the Northwest Sports Fanatics. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel. Smash that like button either now or on your way out. Donate to your boy if you can. Cash App $ ORIONNWSF or the YouTube Super Chat right here. We got some NFL action this Sunday evening. The Houston Texans versus the Kansas City Chiefs. Kickoff is going to be here in roughly 5 minutes. So let's cue up the music, take a look at the thumb, and let's get settled in for some Sunday night football. Happy Sunday, everyone. On the left, welcome back to the Houston Texans, CJ Stroud. And on the right, you know who it is. It is Patrick Mahomes. Should be a good one here. Both teams are evenly matched. Chiefs have won 5 in a row against the Texans. Season is definitely on the line with the Daniel Jones injury. The Texans and the Jaguars now are putting themselves in good position to overtake the Colts to be able to win the division and possibly make the playoffs. Kansas City, obviously, they're not going to be able to win the division. Obviously, Denver with the top spot, not only in the AFC West, but in the AFC with a victory over the Raiders. And again, the Chiefs 5-1 at home. And even though they haven't played very good ball this season, for a number of reasons, you would have to assume the Chiefs, even though the Texan defense is very, very good up front with Will Anderson Jr., Roll Tide, and Danielle Hunter, again, if the Texans win, it's going to be defense. You know that, 100%. But really, the matchup is going to be the offense of the Houston Texans versus the Kansas City defense. Which unit is going to play better? And whatever unit plays better also will, come victorious at the end of the night. Now, we obviously know, with the defense of the Houston Texans, they can impose their will at any given moment. So again, it's definitely going to be tough sledding, for Patrick Mahomes, you would think. But again, with the amount of weapons that they have playing at home, I feel like the home field advantage is kind of the deciding factor. If this game was played in Houston, I would go Houston. But since Kansas City has won 5 in a row, they're 5-1 at home this year. That should give them the edge, unless, Mahomes ends up throwing a pick six, or they have multiple fumbles, or if they end up giving up a defensive or special teams touchdown, then the Texans could obviously take the game. And again, definitely excited about this particular matchup. A lot on the line. Chiefs and Texans both want to make the playoffs. Playoff positioning is very crucial as we're getting into the back end of the season. And again, they have the Vegas line right now before kickoff at 4.5 for the Chiefs. Maybe it should be around 3. But again, could end up going either way. But it feels like with the weather, the crowd, as long as, Mahomes plays within himself and doesn't force, any tough throws in double coverage, and if the defense can get a little bit, on CJ Stroud in his first game back in a few weeks, it'll be very interesting to see. And who knows, it might come down to whoever has the ball last in the fourth quarter. We're definitely going to have our fingers crossed with that. And hopefully we will end up having a good matchup. And then tomorrow we have the Philadelphia Eagles against the Los Angeles Chargers, another intriguing matchup, and we'll be live here for that as well. We're going to be shooting for 100 likes, 100 on the Dono train, and 5 to 15 subs. Shout out to my boy Brooks Beats with the best beats on YouTube. Toby in the building, what's good? Marine Bean in the building, what's good? Sarah in the building, what's good? Cool Kid in the building, what's good? Yeah, and again, I feel, Sarah and a lot of the Colts fans, they know the reality. Again, if you have a fractured leg, unfortunate that the opposite leg you ended up having, the tear. But again, a fantastic start to the season. But as everyone knows in the NFL, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. And unfortunate for Sarah and all of the Colts fan base, realistically, if we're being honest, the Colts are probably not going to be able to hang on to the division and go to the playoffs. And obviously the way that the Jags and the Texans have been playing lately, they may both get in, or maybe only one team gets in. But no one likes to see, your quarterback, playing as well as Danny Dimes did, for Indianapolis. A change of scenery was great for him. Just a little bit bad luck with the injuries. And again, injuries are something that, you expect early. You don't really expect it late in December, and that's what makes it hurt. But again, hopefully prayers up to Danny Dimes. It sounds like, the Colts do want him back, which I would want him back as well. And hopefully he'll be able to recover, obviously with an injury in each leg. Not ideal. But again, they had a great year up to this particular game when he got hurt. And, we'll see how they, rally, around everyone else on the team. But again, tough sledding, for the AFC South. And again, the Houston Texans and the Jacksonville Jaguars, they know what's on the table. And again, I would assume you're going to see a little bit more fire in the belly from those two teams, knowing what happened with Indianapolis. But again, a single injury to a key position like quarterback can really derail a season, and definitely hurts my heart a little bit, especially since how great, they were playing, at the first part of the year. But again, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. And hopefully he'll be okay, obviously, as we go into next year with the rehab process. Yeah, Buccaneers don't look good. I mean, we couldn't even beat the Saints today. There is a strong possibility that the Panthers will win the division this year. Defense is terrible. Offense, the game was in, kind of a torrential downpour. So I don't want to make excuses, but again, the rain was definitely coming down throughout the game. But bottom line, Baker didn't play good enough. Abuka had a drop pass in the end zone that could have won it for us. And the defense has just been terrible for the last month and a half, 2 months. And again, they can't stop the run. They can't stop the pass. Obviously, I'm a diehard fan since 95, and I'm hoping, even with an easy schedule, that we're going to be able to make it. But really, it's going to come down possibly to the last week. And, I was really hoping for, 10, 11, 12, 13 wins. But hell, at this point, the Bucs might end up going 9-8 and missing the playoffs. So I don't really know how to feel, about the season overall, but again, because if the Bucs or the Panthers make it, realistically, the Bucs wouldn't win a playoff game, but the Panthers possibly could, depending on who they play. So again, it hurts me to say it, but again, the Panthers going in would probably be a little bit more entertaining, even though we have the star power with Baker and Bucky Irving, and hopefully we can get Mike Evans back at the right time. And, Godwin is back, but he's still not really the same. And, it definitely pains me to say it, but Panthers actually have a defense. The Buccaneers do not. And again, I'm a defensive guy, and, we'll see how it all plays out. I'm still going to be hoping that we can get the job done, but based on what I've seen this year, defense wins games, defense wins championships, and, unfortunately, the Buccaneers do not have a defense this year, which absolutely stinks. Kickoff here by Kaimi Fairbairn, 61 yards, and a nice 29-yard return there for Rashard Smith. All right, first down and 10 at the KC 33. Like, sub, donate, comment, share. If you haven't smashed that like button yet, please do. Help us get to 100 likes, 100 on that dono train, and 5 to 15 subs. Let's get it. Bye-bye. Shotgun set. Isaiah Pacheco going off that left guard for a 3-yard gain. Danielle Hunter with the tackle, and you're going to see a lot of Will Anderson Jr. and Danielle Hunter causing havoc in the backfield all day and all night. Looking to see if there's any additional injuries that we should be concerned about. Obviously, Juwan Taylor and Trey Smith, 2 starters on the line, out for the Chiefs, so that will be something that the Texans will definitely try to take advantage of, and we already have an injury on the field. And I think that's Morris. Wanya Morris is down. 16th career start in 43 games, and not ideal. It's like one player after another. But hopefully Morris is okay. I mean, with Philadelphia, they're not as good as last year. I mean, their defense is still good and their special teams is good. But again, you would assume that Philly will turn it on, in the playoffs when they get there, but again, they don't really feel, I don't know. I don't really have trust in them. Obviously we know how good they are with Hurts and Saquon and A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert. But again, some injuries on the line, with Lane Johnson and others. And I don't know, it's kind of tough to say. Will they figure it out in the playoffs or will they get beat? And again, based on how they've been playing, within the last month and a half, certain matchups will be tough for them. Like if they ended up playing Green Bay, could go either way. If they play Seattle, they could lose. They could play the Rams, they could lose. And, again, obviously being at home, it's one of the biggest home field advantages when you play in Philly. But again, it definitely feels like it has a different feel, in 2025 based on, who might end up making it, and again, the Patriots and the Broncos got to be at the very top. We know the Bills are going to try to outscore opponents, but how would they do against a team that's got good D and special teams with like the Broncos and the Pats? We will see. And again, we could end up getting a defensive, battle in the Super Bowl with like the Broncos and the Rams or the Patriots and the Rams or something of that nature. But again, the Seahawks are looking very good at the right time, and a run up the middle there for a 3-yard gain by Isaiah Pacheco. Danielle Hunter in there with the tackle. 3rd down and 4 at the KC 39. Shotgun set, Mahomes, and incomplete to Noah Gray, the tight end, and that's going to be 4th down and 4 at the KC 39. But it feels like it's kind of up in the air. We got to still respect the Eagles, for who they have on their roster, but again, it's very possible that we could end up getting the Rams or the Seahawks or, the Packers or some other team, that ends up getting hot. But you still have to assume that the Eagles are a top 3, top 4 choice in the NFC, even though, they have looked a little shaky, but again, when they end up going to the playoffs, things could change, but they'll have to prove it to not only the Philly fans, but for the rest of the NFL, fan base that's watching the games game in and game out. Could have had that. What happened to my hands? But again, we've seen how good the Seahawks and the Rams have looked lately, and plus minus differential. Believe it or not, the Seahawks are number 1 in the NFL in plus minus differential. So again, they've been able to outscore their opponents, more than anybody else in the NFL, and defense is king. And again, we will see how things do play out, but, would not be shocked one bit, if you get the Rams or the Seahawks in the NFC Championship game, hell, it could be both of them. You don't really know. It could be Rams versus Seahawks. That could definitely happen. But you still got to keep the Packers and the Eagles and a few other teams in the mix. Not necessarily, the Buccaneers or the Panthers, or if the Cowboys were somehow, some way, getting in with that last spot. But, you definitely know that the top end of the NFC, where it sits. Same thing with the top end of the AFC. You got the Broncos, you got the Patriots, the Bills because of their offense and Josh Allen, and then it's pretty much everyone else, and you don't really expect too much, but, you never know. Stroud, hands off, and Woody Marks with a nice 6-yard run on 1st down. Tranquil and Connor in there with the tackle. 2nd down and 4 at the Houston 19. TJ in the building. What's good, brother? Shotgun set. Woody Marks up the middle for 3 yards. 3rd down and 1 at the Texan 22. And, maybe the Hawks are a year or two early. I don't know if anyone anticipated them being this good, winning potentially, 11 to 14 games. Again, that was kind of best case scenario, I think, going into the season for Hawk fans was maybe 12 wins. And again, they're going to more than likely pass that mark. And I'm definitely excited to be able to see how it all shakes out with the NFC and the AFC. And obviously, if you guys have been following college football, Notre Dame definitely got the short end of the stick. They should have been in the college football playoff over Alabama. There is no reason for Alabama to be in with 3 losses, but it shows you how biased the committee is, just based on Alabama's name, even with no Nick Saban coaching there anymore. Terrible. Hell, Notre Dame should have got in probably over Miami, but, that's another story. And a nice 2-yard run there by Woody Marks. Carl Loftus in there with the tackle. First down, Texans. Move the chains. Tyler in the building. What's good? 0-0 here early in Kansas City. Shotgun set. CJ Stroud, welcome back. Short left to Christian Kirk. 6-yard gain. Nick Bolton with the tackle there for the Kansas City Chiefs. Yeah, well, everyone knew Oregon was going to make the playoff. I mean, hell, we only had one loss. Congratulations to the Indiana Hoosiers for winning the Big Ten over Ohio State, which I kind of felt like they could, if they played a clean game. And Oregon's got the easiest path like Ohio State did last year. So, JMU, Texas Tech, then Indiana, and then Ohio State or Georgia. So as long as Oregon plays Oregon football, we're going to have a chance this year to do what Ohio State did last year, to be the best team that's not on a bye. And again, that's exactly what we wanted. We didn't want to be a 4. We definitely wanted to be the 5. And I'm very excited to see what happens. Stroud running for his life. And third and manageable, but you do have a flag now. And I think that's going to be defensive holding. Is that on Chenal? And 5-yard penalty on Chenal. Or is that Nick Bolton? Uh-oh. Nick Bolton. Got to be better, Nick. Defensive holding, automatic first down. Yeah, I think they're great. They have the biggest plus-minus differential, which means that they've scored more points and given up. Obviously they're winning their games by more than any other team, and obviously that usually dictates, how good the teams are doing. And you definitely want to be in the green in the plus-minus differential, scoring more points than your opponents. And again, if you can be over 100, which the Hawks are, Rams are there, right there with them. But again, Hawks have had a couple of nice blowouts to extend that number. But I do really like what I'm seeing from them this season. They definitely have a chance. They are a Super Bowl contender. They do have a chance, like the Rams in the NFC West, to go deep. Hell, even the Niners still got a decent record at this point. We assume that they would have fallen off already, but not just yet. And yeah, I usually watch the Hawks, more times than not, as long as, I got time, and I'm at home. So second down and 11, shotgun set. Woody Marks runs towards that right end for about 3 yards. Third down and long, which will be third down and 8 at the Houston 37. Yeah, but it's not just Notre Dame that rejected a bowl game. There's a couple other colleges from the Big 12 that have turned it down also. So, and it kind of feels like, the college football playoff is good for college football, but also it's bad, because then now it's like you're starting to see more and more teams rejecting bowl bids. And again, I thought it was all about money and greed. So we wanted to be able to see these teams play. And, I'm not sure if it's one of those things where that should be legal for them to opt out and whatnot, but, it is all about greed and money. And, for some of those teams, obviously it hurt them a little bit more. Stroud and throws it into the turf. Great defense there by the Chiefs. And that is incomplete. Intended receiver, Nico Collins, a stud for the Texans. Fourth down and 8 at the Texan 37. Yeah, the only problem with the Hawks, is that if they match up with the Rams, in the playoffs, that's like the one team that might get them. They know each other inside and out, and they match up very well with each other. And we know that that's going to be a war and a battle for sure. Townsend with the punt to his former team. Fair caught there by Xavier Worthy. I mean, with Jalen, and Saquon, I mean, they haven't really played, up to their potential. This year, a lot of it has to do with injuries on the offensive line. And again, if your offensive line is healthy, then you can run more RPOs, tush pushes. You're able to get the ball more to your weapons, like last year with A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and Dallas Goedert. But this year, the offense is at times a little bit in mud, a little ugly at times, getting shut out by the Cowboys a few weeks ago in the second half. That's not something that we're normally used to when we talk about Jalen Hurts and the Philadelphia offense. So again, the defense has been pretty good. Special teams has been pretty good, but I think the one letdown would probably be, Jalen and Saquon this year, but again, it's not really on them fully. It also is based on the injuries on the O-line, because if Lane Johnson and the rest of the linemen were healthy, I'm not sure if you were going to have a similar year to last year, but I think that the stats would be slightly better for both Jalen and Saquon. But even with their struggles, they have a great home field advantage in Philly. And again, they could beat the Panthers, they could beat the Cowboys, they could beat the Buccaneers, they could beat the Bears, they could beat the Packers, they could beat the Lions. Really the main teams you would assume that Philly might have a little problem with, would be the Rams and the Seahawks, but it depends on where the game is being played. Because if the Rams have to go to Philly, even if the Rams are the better team, they could lose. Seattle, same thing. They're a better team than Philly right now, but if Seattle had to travel to Philly, let's say in some kind of scenario, I don't know. That's a hard place to win, as everyone knows. But, if any team could do it this year, it would be Seattle and Los Angeles for the Rams and the Hawks. But as you guys know, in the playoffs, home field advantage is a real thing. And, even though, Jalen and Saquon haven't been themselves, they could possibly turn it on, and when it matters the most in the playoffs, but they got to prove it to me. I got to see it. And we also got to be able to see if that offensive line will get healthy. And that doesn't go just for the Eagles. That goes for every single team, in the NFL at this point, whether you're a playoff contender or you are possibly a pretender, unfortunately, like my Buccaneers. So. Shotgun set, Mahomes, short right to Xavier Worthy for a 10-yard gain. Stingley there with the tackle. First down and 10 at the KC 35. Move the chains. Plus, playoff experience will be a factor as well, And again, some teams, haven't been to the playoffs, in a few years. That will be in the playoffs this year. So that will definitely be a factor as well. When you have that playoff experience, it definitely shows late in the year. Shotgun set, Mahomes, short left to Rashee Rice, 5-yard gain. Petrie there with the tackle. Second down and 5 at the KC 40. Like, sub, donate, comment, share. If you haven't smashed that like button yet, please do. Help us get to 100 likes, 100 on that dono train. And 5 to 15 subs. Shout out to my boy Brooks Beats with the best beats on YouTube. Shotgun set. Pacheco goes to that right side for a yard. Edwards and company in there with the tackle. Third down and 4 at the KC 41. It also depends on, what kind of defense you're matching up with, and again, it's not going to be easy breezy like it was obviously for Sam today, when you're playing an inferior opponent, again, if you end up playing a playoff team, everything will be magnified. And, is it possible that Sam plays great? He played great and went 14-3, right, in the regular season last year. And what happened when they played the Lions? He got absolutely brutalized. So I hope that doesn't happen this year, and I don't think it will, but it really depends on the opponent. And a good defensive play there by Will Anderson Jr. Loss of 10. Fourth down and 14 at the KC 31. Defense wins games. Defense wins championships. And I hope that, guys that, were very good, last year, that end up making a name for themselves and, Obviously we know that he's had a great season, and I don't want to see a repeat of what happened to Sam last year in the playoffs this year, and I don't think we will. But again, you never know. Really, just depends on the matchup and at the location of the game as well. And a decent return there towards the sideline by Jalen Noel. 24-yard return. First down and 10 at the Houston 33. Defense is stepping up here early, 0-0 Texans and Chiefs. Texans legitimately have a shot to win this game here today just based on their defense alone. And again, you don't really know, what you're going to get out of Mahomes or CJ Stroud. Offenses haven't looked very good for either team for the most part this year. It's been a very up and down season. And obviously CJ Stroud just coming back to the team. So we'll see what energy and, accuracy that he can bring. And, probably will be a little rusty today, especially being on the road in a harsh environment. KC, Mahomes, you expect a lot more, from a team like Kansas City, but at least they are 5-1 at home this season, out of their 6-6 record. So they still can win in front of their own fans. But really, when it comes to going on the road, they haven't really been able to figure out how to win games on the road, let alone how to win games that are one-score games. They used to be able to go, at a very, very high win percentage, like 7-1 in one-score games. But in this season, it's looking very, very bleak, where, they may only end up with a game or two in the win column in a one-score game, when it's all said and done at the end of the year. So we'll see how it all plays out. But so far, a good defensive battle. 6:45 left in the first quarter, 0-0 Texans and Chiefs. And then tomorrow we got the Eagles and the Los Angeles Chargers. Herbert had that minor injury there. I assume that he'll play. He's a tough guy. And we'll see if the Eagles can win on the road or if the Chargers can get the upset. CJ definitely is going to have to challenge the secondary of Kansas City. And we'll see which offensive line and which defensive line will impose their will. Shotgun set. There he is. CJ going deep. He's got Nico. Oh! First down, Texans. My ESP is on point. I figured that they were going to go deep, and they did. 2 seconds later, 46-yard pass from CJ Stroud to Nico Collins, and that's going to be your mismatch. And obviously, you're going to have a few others with like Kirk and, a few other guys that can get behind the defense. But that's one area that you can exploit on Kansas City. They got Chris Jones up front, and they're going to be able to do some damage, with the front seven. But you can definitely exploit some weaknesses in that secondary. Great job there by Nico Collins. First down and 10 at the KC 21. And, if you're CJ Stroud and the Texans, this should be something that you should do every quarter. You should be going deep at least once or twice every quarter, especially if you want to try to win this game after the injury with Daniel Jones and the Colts. The Jags and the Texans are salivating, for the Colts to obviously start going on a downward spiral, obviously with that injury. And will we get the Texans and the Jags in the playoffs? It's possible, but it's also possible we might only get one team out of the AFC South. Let's go over some of the scores here as we go on a commercial break. Hawks 37, Falcons 9. Big victory there on the road against a bad team. Bills 39, Bengals 34 in a shootout between Burrow and Josh Allen. Fantastic game in the snow if you didn't get a chance to watch it. Titans 31, Browns 29, the battle of the bads. Vikings 31, Commanders 0. Dolphins 34, Jets 10. Buccaneers losing to the Saints 24-20, unexcusable. Jags 36, Colts 19 after the Daniel Jones injury. Steelers 27, Ravens 22. Broncos 24, Raiders 17. And then the Packers beat the Bears 28-21 in a shootout. Rams winning 45-17 on the road over the Cardinals. And then we saw the Lions beat the Cowboys 44-30 on Thursday Night Football. And then tomorrow, we got the 8-4 Eagles versus the 8-4 Chargers. Really looking forward to that one as well. First down and 10 at the KC 21. Waiting for the commercial break to end. And then looks like the Texans are in great position, obviously, for the field goal here, but they're definitely going to be looking for 6. Woody Marks, 7-yard run over to that right side. Second down and 3 at the KC 14. Hard runner, Woody Marks. Very physical. And McDuffie, insult to injury there. You know, not only do you give up the big play, then you also get hurt. That's rough. Second down and 3 at the KC 14. Marks runs towards that left side now, and Nick Bolton is there. Loss of 2. Good defense there by Nick Bolton. Third down and 5 at the KC 16. And obviously, if you're the Chiefs here, you're going to try to hold the 3 if possible. Duffy running there on the sideline. Hopefully he's okay. They're going to need him. Because if he doesn't return in the game, they're going to exploit that secondary even more. 4 wide receivers set here on third down and 5. And looks like that's a illegal shift there on the Texans. Touchdown, Texans, but that's coming back. That's rough when you end up getting an illegal motion on a play that turned it into a touchdown. Two players in motion, and you got to obviously be set, and that's rough. That would have been an easy touchdown there for Dalton Schultz. That gets taken off the board. I mean, great execution on the throw and the catch, but CJ Stroud, shotgun set. Jaden Higgins is there. 9-yard gain. Fourth down and 1 at the KC 12. Decision time. Do you just take the points, or do you end up going for it and you hand it off to Woody Marks to try to get that first down, or a QB sneak by CJ Stroud? I mean, you don't really need to go for it on fourth down, but let's see if they end up giving them the first down here. They might actually mark him with the first down. Looks like they gave it to him. It was very close. It was looking like it was going to be 4th and 1 or 4th and inches, but it looks like they're going to give it to him. First down, Texans. First down and 10 at the KC 11. Well, I guess that takes that other scenario out the door. Less than 5 minutes to go here in the first quarter. 0-0 here early between the Texans and the Chiefs. But obviously Houston is threatening. First game back for CJ Stroud in a few weeks. And you're already feeling his impact already. And we know that Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson Jr. are going to get sack lunches and, be definitely, a threat on that side of the ball. Yeah, definitely looks short, based off where the foot is and the ball is. Okay, now the challenge flag comes out. Definitely looks 4th and 1. That's why when it was 4th and 1, and then they marked it first down, and then obviously now with the challenge, but that definitely is 4th and 1, no doubt about that. Got to get the calls correct. And Casey is challenging and should win that. All right, decision time here for the Texans. I mean, if you go QB sneak with CJ Stroud, you can get it, but do they respect the Chiefs defense enough, to just take 3? Or are they willing to kind of take a chance since it's only 4th and 1? I mean, based on how the Texan season has gone, this could be an opportunity where, you probably have a 70% chance of getting it if you do a QB sneak with Stroud. So if you hand it off, there is a chance that you may not get it. So see if what they decide to do here. But if it was me and I was calling plays, I would go QB sneak with Stroud. All right, everything getting situated there from the clock management. All right, here we go. Goal line set. CJ Stroud. And there we go with the QB sneak. First down, Texans. Good play call there. A little risky, but now we got a flag on the play. And let's see who this is on. This is on Houston. Oh, my goodness. Offsides on the offense. Wow. Well, now that will bring them back to 4th down and 6. And now you got to kick the field goal. Brutal. I mean, it was already kind of ballsy enough to go for it there, but based on how the season has gone, sometimes you got to take a few chances here and there. And now as it goes to 4th and 6 at the KC 17, you got to bring out your kicker. Fairbairn can't be going for it on 4th down and 6 this early in the game. So it's kind of a petty call, though, because, I mean, if you watch the Eagles when they run their tush push, they usually have 2 or 3 guys offside. So, I'm not really sure about that call there, but, All right, Fairbairn coming out for a 35-yard attempt. Kick is up and good. 3-0 Texans. A little bit of a self-inflicted wound, but I don't know, kind of a petty call. If you've watched the NFL this season, how many times have you seen a tush push or, someone going for it on 4th and inches and 4th and 1 where they have a few guys moving on the line or that, potentially are in the neutral zone and they just let it go. It's definitely not a consistent call, in every game that you see in the 2025 season. Hell, even last year. But again, they'll take the 3 after that big, long ball pass from CJ Stroud to Nico Collins got him into field goal range. Obviously, they were thinking of 6, but they'll take 3. Fairbairn with the 35-yard field goal, 5 plays, 51 yards, 2:27 off the clock, 3-0 Houston. Off to a commercial break, and we'll be back in just a moment. Like, sub, donate, comment, share. If you haven't smashed that like button yet, please do. Help us get to 100 likes, 100 on that dono train. And 5 to 15 subs. We need 90 subs to get to 23,400. Let's get it, baby. 3-0 Texans here early in the first quarter. Yeah, but you don't see consistency on the calls game in and game out. It might be to you, based on what you see and your opinion, but there definitely isn't consistency in that call. .418 left in the first quarter, 3-0 Texans. Let's see what the Chiefs will do on this next drive. They're definitely going to run the ball and try to, get that position group going early and often. But again, they're definitely going to have to, do a lot of bootleg and play action. And we'll see if we can get the Chiefs on the board here momentarily. Fairbairn kicks, 63 yards. And Brashard Smith with a little hurdle. And good tackle there by Speed and Brooks for the Texans. First down and 10 at the KC 23. Well, Chiefs have won the last 5 matchups against the Texans. Obviously we know the defense is much better on Houston than it is on Kansas City. Really the question marks are, you don't really know what you're going to get out of the Houston offense or the Chief offense, but tough to say. Could go either way. Mahomes, and a nice 9-yard run there by Patrick Mahomes, and he's going to have to do that in the second half as well. Second down and 1 at the KC 32, but it definitely feels like whoever wins this game will be winning by not very much. It kind of feels like it'll be by 3 to 7 points, more than likely. But again, we will see. Five-yard run there by Isaiah Pacheco right up the middle. First down, Chiefs. Move the chains. First down and 10 at the KC 37. Azeez Al-Shaair with the tackle. About 3 minutes left here in the first quarter. 3-0 Houston. Shotgun set. Mahomes scrambles to that right side. And a nice 10-yard run. And again, this might be the story for Mahomes and the Chiefs if they're going to win. He's going to have to probably get 50 to 70 yards rushing on the ground, which is a lot. But again, it's better than him throwing an interception. 9-yard run there by Mahomes. Stingley with the coverage. Second down and 1 at the KC 46. Pacheco runs towards that right side for 5 yards. First down, Chiefs. Kareem Hunt runs towards that right side for a 2-yard gain. Anderson and company with the tackle. Second down and 8 at the Houston 47. Shout out to my boy Brooks Beats with the best beats on YouTube. Less than 2 minutes to go here in the first quarter. 3-0 Houston. Will Anderson Jr. and Danielle Hunter, 22.5 sacks between the two of them, tied for third, and the most pressures with 127. Shotgun set, Mahomes. It's 12 noon. You know what time it is. Time for a sack lunch. Yum, 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 yum. Tommy, I see you. Wow. And that's a big 9-yard loss. Down goes Mahomes. Third down and 17 at the KC 44. And that won't be the only sack that you're going to get on Mahomes here today. All right, to a guy, I see you. And Mahomes, shotgun set, short right to Rashee Rice, and about a 7-yard gain there. Al Shair with the coverage and the tackle. 4th down and 10 at the Houston 49. Clock winding down. That'll be the end of the first quarter. 3-0 Houston. I think Houston is the better team between the two, but again, being on the road, if the game was in Houston, I think Houston wins, I wouldn't say easily, but definitely, a little bit of a better situation than they are here. But again, Houston is still good enough with their defense where they can slow Mahomes down. And this isn't the same Chief offense that we've seen in the last few years. I mean, this is the worst team that they've had in a number of years, and again, for a lot of the people assuming, that you're going to rekindle that magic that you had with Mahomes, in years past, there'll be, spurts. Well, you'll see it on a drive here and there, but as far as consistency, they don't got it in 2025. End of the first quarter, 3-0 Texans. All right, we're at 16, 84 to go to hit that goal. So looking for our first dono on our dono train. 3-0 Texan lead. All right, we're about to get into this second quarter, low-scoring affair. And it's kind of weird, to see the Chiefs, not really that good on offense or defense or special teams this season, but I guess that's why they're 6-6. And, they have a 5-1 record at home, and they've beaten the Texans the last 5, times, but this could be the game that, potentially Houston could steal. Even though they've had some struggles against Kansas City lately over the last few years. Flag on the play. Was it running into the kicker? That'll be declined. All right, Texans. And again, if I'm Houston, I'm going deep once or twice every quarter. They already were able to cash in with Nico, on that first long bomb. And again, the more that they go deep and challenge that secondary, that's how you beat Kansas City. Obviously, if you're just going to dink and doink with little screen passes and, crossing routes, that plays into their scheme. So again, if they can end up going deep, I'm not sure if they really have anyone that can match up with Nico Collins one-on-one. And if Christian Kirk can even get behind the safety, that could be someone that could get a deep pass as well. Woody Marks off that left tackle for a yard. 1 yard gain. 2nd down and 9 at the Houston 11. Run defense for the Chiefs, obviously still, pretty solid in that particular category, but being able to get sack lunches and pressure the quarterback, something that they definitely need to improve on. Megan in the building, how are you? Megan with a tour, yeah, they look fantastic. Super Bowl contenders, that's for sure. Stacks, Racks with a little Cactus Jack. Bang, bang, we're at 2:98 to go to hit the dono goal. And a nice pass by Stroud, but ball comes out and intercepted, or did it hit the ground? Looks like it just hit the ground. Wow. Missed opportunity for the Chiefs there. And that's going to be 3rd down and 9 after that Stroud pass to Nico Collins. Nico's got it. He's got it. And then it just comes out. And then it flips right in to the hands of the Chiefs, but they just can't corral it. Jolly in the building. What's good? Man, you got a good chance of winning the division. You guys deserve it more than we do. Our defense stinks. Can't even beat the Saints. We don't even deserve to get in. And we play you guys twice, so we'll see what happens. Stacks, Racks with a little Cactus Jack. Bang, bang. $10 holla. We're at 12:88 to go to hit the goal. Appreciate you. And another incomplete pass there after the defensive hold, and that should be on the Chiefs. But again, if the Bucs ended up making, the playoffs, we wouldn't be able to probably beat anybody. But if the Panthers made it, based on how good your defense has been playing, you guys would be huge underdogs like we would be. But you guys would have a better chance, to perform and to be able to upset an opponent than us. The defense has just not been good all year. And even if we end up getting McMillan back and Mike Evans, I don't know if it's going to make a difference because obviously those guys play offense, not defense. So 7-yard run there by Marks. Connor there with the tackle. 2nd down and 3 at the Houston 23. Yeah, but the thing is, though, is you guys got, your offense is going to be kind of hit or miss, but you can still score points, but the defense is great. Bucky is back, and obviously we played in a torrential downpour in Tampa today, which wasn't ideal, but, Shuck scoring a couple touchdowns on the ground, unexcusable, and it shows you the lack of depth that we have on that side of the ball. And, I'm not used to seeing, Tampa with a shitty defense. Normally that's our strong suit. So, we'll see how it goes. You got the Bears, you got the Packers, you got the Lions, you got the Eagles, you got the Hawks, you got the Rams, Niners still kind of in the mix. And we'll see. It's going to come down to either the Panthers or the Buccaneers making it for the South. CJ Stroud going deep to Jaden Higgins and overthrows him, incomplete. 3rd down and 3 at the Houston 23. But it definitely is going to be interesting when we play each other, Jolly. And again, best case scenario, for, I guess, the Bucs would be splitting, because I don't think we're going to be able to win 2 games against Carolina. And normally, regardless if our teams are good or bad, we typically split anyways. Usually records go out the window, even though we're similar this year. But, I guess, going 2-0 against your opponent, or you guys going 2-0 against us, that would be best case scenario. But we'll wait and find out, what happens here in the next up and coming weeks. 3rd down and 3. Stroud. Dalton Schultz is there. He's open. First down, Texans. Nice throw to the sideline. Edwards with the tackle. First down and 10 from Stroud to Schultz to the Houston 37. Nick Chubb entering the game, and a nice 3-yard run up the middle. Tranquil and Nick Bolton with the tackle. 2nd down and 7 at the Houston 40. But, it hates me to, it pains me to say, but, we're definitely pretenders. If we make the playoffs and we end up winning the NFC South, I don't think we can beat anybody. I don't care who it is. Eagles, or even the Niners or the Lions or Packers, Bears, Seahawks, Rams. I don't think we can beat anybody, honestly, based on how we've been playing and with the injuries that we have. And, it's tough. 2nd down and 7 at the Houston 40. But hopefully you'll be available and free if they end up, moving those games around. Obviously, we got the Buccaneers and the Falcons coming up on Thursday. And, we saw the Seahawks absolutely, torch them today. But, who the hell knows if Tampa can even beat Atlanta. Stroud bouncing it to the outside. Throws it deep. Got a man. There's Nico. Go, Nico, go. Go. The 30, the 20. Big block on the sideline. Wow. 53-yard pass from Stroud to Nico, and that's how you beat the Chiefs. You go deep, and you go to Nico, and you go to him often. And again, a big, long, 50-yard play, roughly in that first quarter, another 50-yard play here in the second. Continue to go deep to Nico Collins, and he'll give you results. Great job by C.J. Stroud getting chased by 3 different Chiefs, but still being able to keep his eyes downfield. Perfect throw, perfect catch. Look at the yak yards and the vision in the blocks downfield. Beautiful. 5-yard penalty there on the false start by the Texans by Trent Brown. 1st and goal at the KC 12. We're trying to go for our 5th NFC South crown. Panthers are looking to be champs in the NFC South for the first time in a long time. And, I admire the defense. Bryce Young has gotten better. Rico Dowdle, Tet McMillan, you got something cooking, and obviously you're much stronger on the defensive side of the ball rather than the offense. But like Bucs offense is better than the Panthers offense, but your guys' defense is night and day difference compared to ours. So, I mean, I'm not delusional. I know when my team is good and I know when they're not. So shotgun set, C.J. Stroud, short right to Woody Marks. And that's a loss of a yard. 2nd and goal at the KC 13. And for the Chiefs to be able to stay in this game, they need to hold the Texans to field goals as much as possible. Maybe 1 touchdown and, 3, 4, 5 field goals. But again, if the Texans can get pay dirt, 2 or more touchdowns in this game, that might be enough to end up winning this matchup here this Sunday evening. Every, great run eventually comes to an end with the Patriots and again with the Chiefs. But, if the Chiefs were able to, get a Tyreek Hill type, and kind of retool in the draft and free agency next year, it's possible that they could get back to winning like 10 games, 11 games. But definitely Mahomes doesn't look the same as he did in years past. That's the truth. But, part of that is the offensive line and also who's calling plays. But they probably needed a new offensive coordinator for the last few years. 4-yard pass from Stroud to Nico Collins. Williams with the tackle. 3rd and goal at the KC 9. And this might be the reason why they finally can fire their OC. And, I'm not saying they're going to bring Bieniemy, to that main role again, but they definitely need a spark in the play calling. Play calling hasn't been very good for Kansas City in 2025. Third and goal at the KC 9. Stroud, shotgun set. Woody Marks is there. Touchdown, Texans. Blown coverage by the Kansas City Chiefs. And Woody Marks gets in. And again, 9-0 Texans. And again, Chiefs at home normally get the job done. They're 5-1 this year at home. But the inability of the offense and Mahomes and the inability to stop, on defense, the Texans are the better team this year. The real question is, could they win on the road in a harsh environment? And so far in this game, the answer is yes. Obviously, it helps to have CJ Stroud back in this game. But honestly, even if CJ wasn't back, right? Even if he wasn't back, the Texans could still win this game with the backup. Extra point is up and good. 10-0 Texans, and that's a brutal blow to the Kansas City defense there. And again, they don't really have the same type of pass rushers, to get to the quarterbacks like they have in years past, and it definitely is an area that's getting exposed week in and week out. 10-0 Houston. Just defense, man. Today's game, I watched it from, the beginning to the end. It was a torrential downpour. I mean, just nonstop, heavy rain. Baker, did his best, but the game was sloppy. Interception here, interception there, bad throw here, bad throw there. Running the football, everyone slipping. And really the killer, was Shuck. Obviously running into the end zone for a couple TDs on the ground for some long gains. That's unexcusable. And again, if you're going to have that happen, you're going to lose. And, that's why we lost. Defense has been terrible this year. And again, it's not just today. It's been like pretty much all season. They've been terrible. And Baker was able to bail us out, in 2-minute warning fashion in the first 3 weeks of the season to make it look exciting, to kind of cover up some of the defensive flaws that we have. And then, on top of all the injuries to McMillan and Mike Evans and all these other players, we just got Bucky Irving back, but the offensive line hasn't been good. The defense hasn't been good. We didn't have Wirfs today either. If we have him, maybe we win. And again, these little injuries here and there are definitely adding up. And, I just wish the team was, a little bit more, consistent, but, it is what it is. Every year is going to be a different type of year with who you have. And, just a very disappointing loss to the Saints today. Like, sub, donate, comment, share. If you haven't smashed that like button yet, please do. Help us get to 100 likes, 100 on that dono train. And 5 to 15 subs. Let's get it, baby. We'll be doing the Eagles and the Chargers tomorrow. The battle of the 8 and 4 should be an intriguing matchup, even with Herbert's little minor injury. And we'll see if the Eagles can win a game on the road. Chief fans probably in shock right now, but they're 6-6 this year. Texans are 7-5, and even though they're 3-3 on the road, Houston, they've been playing more consistent good ball than the Chiefs lately. So crazy to see the downfall of Kansas City, but sometimes that happens. All the other teams in the AFC finally caught up and surpassed them. And even teams that normally Kansas City would dominate have caught up and passed them. So it really shows you, where they were and where they're at now are two completely different places. Fairbairn, 63 yards. Tyquan Thornton with a nice 33-yard return. But they definitely got to fire Nagy. Nagy is fucking terrible. They got to get rid of him. Pacheco, shotgun set, runs towards that right side for a 1-yard gain. 2nd down and 9 at the KC 36. Less than 9 minutes to go here in the second quarter. 10-0 Houston. And again, they've been able to exploit the weakness in the secondary by going deep to Nico Collins, once in the first quarter, once in the second quarter for about 50-yard gains. And I assume they'll do that in the third and the fourth as well. Mahomes, tipped, intercepted. There it is. Petrie. And again, this is just what Kansas City does. Again, when you're trying to squeeze the football, into a small area, again, these other teams that they're playing, they're not afraid of Patrick Mahomes anymore. And really, this is kind of a sad thing to say, but the biggest thing for Patrick Mahomes now in 2025, his biggest asset is his legs. His arm is no longer a weapon. It's just not. Short passes, deep passes, the accuracy and the comfort level is just not there. And again, we know Mahomes isn't really a true runner, but really that's the only, kind of positive thing. And they're looking at the replay here with Petrie to see if he gets his arms below. I mean, I'm not really seeing a lot of movement. The ball does hit the turf, but I mean, his hands are on the top of the football. The ball hits, but you don't really see it move. It'll be interesting to see what they call here. I would assume the call will stand. Yeah, but again, if this is one of the first times that you've watched the Chiefs, Jolly, I mean, they've been like this all year. They can't get sacks. The offense with Nagy calling plays is terrible. They haven't been a good football team, period. Stroud, a little check down. And Dalton Schultz is there. 4-yard gain, Tranquil with the tackle. 2nd down and 6 at the Houston 47. I mean, and a lot of the teams that are at 500 or a game or two, above 500, like the Texans, it shows you how much better that they're playing at this point in the season than Kansas City. I mean, they're better on that side of the ball, but the problem is they can't win one-score games this year. And, normally they go 6-1 in one-score games. And, if you end up going 0-5, 0-6, or 1-7 in one-score games, something of that nature, of course, you're not going to have a good record. So, I mean, the defense has been a little bit better maybe than the offense at times, but, both have been good at times, but for the most part, inconsistent, for both sides of the ball. And the main thing is they don't have pass rushers that can get sacks this year. Stroud up the middle for a 2-yard gain on 3rd down and 1. 1st down, Texans. I mean, a few weeks back, they showed the graphic when they were 0-5 and, one-score games. And I imagine they'll pull the graphic up at some point before the game is over. And they'll go give you an updated graphic on, what the record is, in one-score games for Kansas City this year compared to all the previous years where they were very, very good. Where they were 6-0 in one-score games or 7-1. That was normally what they would do in one-score games. They would win 90% or higher, in one-score games. But this year, they're having a hard time doing that even once or twice this season. So, and hence the 6-6 record. But the only thing that they really do have going for them is they got a 5-1 record at home. But it may not be enough here today. Shotgun set, and Marks runs towards that right side for a 4-yard gain. 2nd down and 6 at the KC 42. Now, I mean, especially with Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson Jr., again, defense wins games, defense wins championships. And again, if you have a dominant defense like the Texans, or the Broncos, regardless if the offense sputters at times with Bo Nix or CJ Stroud, sometimes it'll be enough. They'll get you in good position with turnovers where you don't have to go 80 yards, to punch it in. And again, the Texans have more balance and it shows, even though they're on the road. Shotgun set, Stroud. Chiefs bring the blitz on 2nd down and 6, and that gets batted down. 3rd down and 6 at the KC 42. Oh, yeah. A lot of the wins in the previous 3, 4, 5 years have been lucky. Also, maybe a bit of an assist from the referees at times with, very odd, PI calls or flags getting picked up, making us kind of wonder, like, are the refs in on it, type of thing. And that's not being a hater. That's just being real, based on the games that we've watched. Have they made good calls? Yes. But there's also been some questionable calls by the refs kind of helping them out in the last 3, 4, 5 years. There's no doubt about that. And that, again, that's not being a Kansas City hater. That's just being observant of what's going on. And that gets thrown into the turf there. Intended tight end was Dalton Schultz. Now it's going to be 4th down and 6 at the KC 42. But I mean, I think that's a fair statement. If there was one team, that ended up getting, the most help by the referees, whether they asked for it or not, definitely Kansas City. And before them, who was it? It was the Patriots, right? With Tom Brady. It definitely felt like anything that was kind of borderline, it would go in their favor, no matter what, for New England and Kansas City. But for other teams, it wasn't really like that. It's like they almost catered, because they wanted to be able to have those teams, for ratings and money and whatnot, so. But obviously the refs can't bail them out this year. Mike in the building, what's good? And Tommy Townsend, the former Chief, with the punt. And now it's going to be 1st down and 10 as they pin him at the 3-yard line. Things keep getting worse for Kansas City. This could end up turning into a sack. It could turn into a safety. Could turn into another interception. And the very high probability that KC will be at 0 at halftime. And they had KC, the favorite, on the Vegas line by 4.5. Seems like someone's cashing in. But again, if you've watched both teams play lately, one team has played much better than the other. It's just like, do you trust Houston on the road? Obviously, if Houston was at home, right, this is a no-brainer. Houston wins, and they might end up winning big. But obviously, this is a little bit more of a even matchup, at least going into the game, because Houston was on the road. They're 3-3 on the road, but one team's got a defense, the other one doesn't. One team's got an offense that you trust a little bit more than the other in Houston. And even if the backup was playing, for Houston, they still maybe win this game. Shows you how good their defense is this year with Will Anderson Jr. and Danielle Hunter. Like, sub, donate, comment, share. If you haven't smashed that like button yet, please do. Help us get to 100 likes, 100 on that dono train. And 5 to 15 subs. Let's get it, baby. And again, based on how they played this year, I don't think anyone would really want to see Kansas City. It's kind of like Tampa Bay. Normally Tampa Bay and the Chiefs are good, but we don't deserve to be in the playoffs this year. I think we're better than the Chiefs this year, but again, our defense is probably even worse than Kansas City's. So what does that tell you? So it's like, I think our offense with Baker is much better. Obviously that's like kind of the one strong suit for us. Baker is entertaining. I love him. He's a dog, right? Bucky Irving, Rashad White, Tucker, and obviously, with all the other options that we have at Cade Otton, and, we don't have Evans or McMillan yet, but hopefully we'll have them before the season ends. But, it's all nice and dandy to have all these sexy pieces on offense. But if your defense can't stop the run and they can't stop the pass, it doesn't really matter what you do on offense. It's not as good as Baker Mayfield is. He's not going to be able to do a Josh Allen week in and week out, even though Baker, does play like a top 10 quarterback most of the time. There's really only one guy, in the NFL that doesn't have a defense and they can still win games based off his talent, and that's Josh Allen. Baker is good, but he might not be, Josh Allen good, and I think that's a fair statement, even though I do love me some Baker. We've seen Josh Allen take over games, in a very crazy way, on the ground, right, with his legs through the air. Mahomes towards the sideline, and finally a 1st down there for the Chiefs. 12-yard pass from Mahomes to Thornton, 1st down and 10. Move the chains. But, maybe this will be a good thing for Kansas City. Miss the playoffs for a year, draft well, get rid of Nagy at OC, replace him, get some free agents to come in. And maybe they'll be able to spark a little bit of the magic. But again, Mahomes and Kelsey aren't getting any younger, and the age is starting to kind of show, Like Mahomes is, probably still got a little bit more life in the tank, than Kelsey, but still you're not really seeing the same explosiveness and accuracy out of Mahomes like we are, used to seeing. Fuck, man. I wouldn't mind if Bowles got fired, if I'm being honest. I wouldn't mind getting a new coach in there. Again, the defense just isn't good. And he's a defensive, kind of guy, right? So, I mean, obviously, if we earn it and we make it, I'll be happy. But, Panthers are probably more deserving and would be funner to watch. You're not going to hear, most, fans say that, but, I'm not like most fans, I'm not going to act like everything is, good when it's not. So 5-yard run there by Mahomes. And that's the crazy thing right now. Mahomes, biggest asset might be his legs, and how did we get here where the best thing about Mahomes is him running? Is that really where we're at now? And we know he can still make some throws here and there, and he can get touchdowns, but it's just far and few between from what we're used to. 3rd down and 5 at the KC 21. Shotgun set for Mahomes. Pressure on the edge. Mahomes steps up in the pocket and is about to get sacked. And flag comes down. And it almost feels like when you're watching Chief games, I got a face mask by the Texans, so they get bailed out here. But Mahomes, it feels like even getting first downs, let alone touchdowns, is like pulling teeth this year. Like it seems like it's so difficult, for them to get positive yardage, and that's not something that we've normally seen, from the Chiefs. Now, if the defense, could get better, then obviously, we would be something. But, sometimes you have to understand, what teams are more well-balanced, on offense, defense, and special teams. And, whether you're a Packer fan or a Bear fan or a Lion fan, I mean, hell, even the Niners, with where they're at, they're more deserving than the Bucs this year. Like, honestly, nobody deserves to make the playoffs in the NFC South, period. Panthers or Buccaneers, if they're going based off the best teams, obviously someone's got to win, the division and get in. But the Niners are probably more deserving than the Bucs and the Panthers this year. Mahomes, deep right to Xavier Worthy, 22-yard pass. First down, Chiefs. I mean, he's got weapons with Rice and Worthy and Kelsey, and, it's not like they don't have weapons out there, But I think the play calling by Nagy is, not very good. And it hasn't been very good for the last few years, but maybe they needed to have it be like this for him to actually get fired, so they can get someone else. And a little 3-yard gain there, and we're at the 2-minute warning. 2nd down and 7 at the Houston 34. It also shows you, if you have injuries and you have talent, if you have proper coaching like the Niners, again, and that's a rare case where you got Saleh and you got Kyle Shanahan. I wish that those were my coaches, because if I had those two guys, I would feel a hell of a lot better. But I don't like, really Bowles. I don't really like what we got at OC and DC. If we have to clean house, and change the scheme and, try to, kind of not necessarily blow it up, because we obviously know the offense has got amazing pieces, and Evans and Godwin are getting close to retiring and whatnot. So that's why we got Abuka and McMillan and a few of the others like Tez Johnson. But, definitely the coaching staff and the defense needs to be retooled, and hopefully that'll be something that they do. 10-0 Houston. I mean, hell, the Niners have a bunch of no-name players on defense, and they can still win games because of that great coaching. And, if you have elite coaching, you can have average players that'll turn into good players or great players based off the coaching. And, we haven't had good coaching in a minute. Maybe the last time that we had really good coaching is when we had Bruce Arians. So it's been a minute. And I don't know if I would say that, because again, Baker Mayfield is fun. Really, the thing that sucks about, the team overall is the defense can't stop anything, but again, Baker is fun, he'll make plays, he'll be able to get big first downs with his legs. He's a good runner at the quarterback position. We got really sexy weapons, on running back, wide receiver, and tight end. Really, the only thing is coaching and then that defense, But we will see if Tampa will get in or not. But, if we do, could get ugly. But it really depends on the matchups and, how everyone, stacks up based on, who plays who. Yeah, I mean, again, and we haven't had Mike Evans and we haven't had McMillan pretty much, for a good chunk of the year. Haven't had McMillan all year, and we haven't had Mike Evans for quite some time. And, it's like when you don't have a lot of your stars playing, hard to win, Mahomes goes towards the sideline. Lassiter trying to punch that ball out. I mean, first 3 weeks of the season, we were looking like Baker Mayfield might win MVP, right? The defense wasn't really getting exposed that early in the season, but we just been, hit with too many injuries and, just poor coaching, period. Point blank and simple. I mean, imagine if the Seahawks didn't have JSN, and Kenneth Walker III, and some of your defensive guys for a good chunk of the year. You think you would be as good as you are now? Hell no, So, again, it's like when you don't have your stars, it makes a big difference. Some people can't relate if it's not happening to their team, but again, if you could put yourself in someone else's shoes, if you don't have some of your, key weapons, you're not winning games. Mahomes incomplete, short middle to Noah Gray. Second down and 10 at the Houston 27. Shotgun set. Kareem Hunt runs towards that left tackle. 5-yard run. Third down and 5 at the Houston 22. Yeah, he's back, but he's still not 100%. Sometimes makes a few plays here and there, but he used to be automatic with his hands, in obviously the Brady era, and obviously age, he's starting to get up there a little bit, and obviously the injuries, haven't been good, and he's nowhere near being what he was. Third down and 8, shotgun set. And Autry, it's 12 noon. You know what time it is. Time for a sack lunch. Yum, 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 yum. Danico Autry with the big sack lunch. And just when the Chiefs start to get a little bit of momentum before halftime, the sack lunch comes out for the Houston Texan defense again. I mean, you got to be able to change your game plan up when you're going against a team like Houston and their defense, as well as Denver. If you go against elite defenses, you can't, hang in the pocket like you normally do when you're playing a shitty team. Like if you're playing Tampa and their defense, then you're going to have 5-6 seconds to go through all your progressions. But when you're going against Houston or Denver, you're going to have like a second, second and a half And if you don't make the right read, you're going to get sacked. Yeah. And again, everyone has been on edge for that team all year, because obviously the expectations and everything that they did. Kick is up and no good. Insult to injury. Can't even make a field goal. I know my team stinks, but golly. Can't even get a field goal from Butker. Unbelievable. Doink. I mean, that's just been the story of the season for them, right? When it rains, it pours, and, nothing they do works. They can't get sacks. They can't stop a lot of people. The play calling isn't good, even though they have, good pieces, but again, it's not as efficient. Everything going Houston. And they got a minute left. So now this is going to put them in a position where, if you're Houston, go for the end zone, and try to be able to go up 17-0 or at least 13-0. You can get a field goal with Fairbairn. I think the real question that we have to ask is Mahomes done? Based on elite quarterback play, is this the first year of the decline and this is what we're going to get for the rest of his career? Or if they fire the OC and Nagy, get some offensive linemen, they do have a few offensive linemen out as well. So obviously when you're going against a top D, whether that would make a difference or not, probably not that much of a difference, but slightly, but I think that's really the question that we have to ask ourselves. Is this the first year in the decline in the Patrick Mahomes era? And if so, will he ever get back to being the player that he was? And I think truthfully, he may not. He may not ever be the same player that we saw earlier. And again, if you're a Chief fan, you have to be very thankful for all the things that you've already were able to accomplish. Again, you already have gone to a few Super Bowls. You already got a few Super Bowl wins, and again, for the people that thought, oh, he's, going to get as many as Tom Brady. Well, now you're starting to see, how good Tom Brady really was. And again, to be able to do it not only in New England, but in Tampa, Tom is in a category of all his own. And, you're probably not going to see another, type of Tom Brady player for a long, long time. Yeah. And again, it kind of stinks, on that end, that, this might be the first year of the decline. But on the positive side, we've seen everyone else catch up, and, everyone, not just the Bills, as like the main rival. Obviously the Bills still don't have a defense, but Josh Allen is amazing. Him and Burrow went at it in the snow today, which was awesome. Love watching Burrow and Allen go at it, but all the other teams have started to catch up, and even teams that are similar in record, like the Texans and the Jags, they've even been able to play better ball than Kansas City. So it's not just the top teams, like Indy early in the season, Denver, the Patriots, obviously those teams, but then even the Chargers and a few of these other teams that normally would be behind Kansas City have already leapfrogged them as well. Flag on the play. And they're going to call this one on Nico Collins. Offensive pass interference. Yeah, but Brady never looked as bad as this. Regardless if you're a New England fan or a Buck fan or a Brady fan or a Brady hater, and you got to think Brady had less to work with. A lot of his teams, he didn't really have a lot of star power, at wide receiver until he came to the Buccaneers, he had Randy Moss, and then again, he made guys like Welker and Edelman and, Amendola, but again, those aren't normal guys that would go to other teams and dominate. Like he made those guys, again, if you put Amendola and some of these other guys on other teams, maybe besides Welker, Amendola and, some of these other individuals, like, would they actually be even anything on another team? If they didn't have a guy like Tom throwing to them? Shotgun set. Stroud, short right to Dalton Schultz. 4-yard pass. 3rd down and 16 at the Houston 27. And I think really what it comes down to is like preparation. There's a reason why the elites are elite, whether it be Jordan or with Brady, because they put in more time watching film and, off screen, when no one's looking, how much practicing and how much, film study that they're doing, and they're doing more than anyone else. And if you're willing to do more than anyone else, then it shows, and if you're not willing to go on that crazy level, then you're not going to get the same type of results. It's not like Brady was the fastest or had the strongest arm, but he outworked everyone. Stroud steps up in the pocket, and Nico Collins is unstoppable. 1st down, Texans. Move the chains. Yeah, none of those guys are elite. You put any of those guys on the Cleveland Browns, we're not even talking about any of them except maybe Edelman. Edelman maybe could do something on a few other teams, just based on his athleticism. But, I think that's what makes, the mystique about him so good. It's like you had Belichick, he had Gronk, who was one of the best tight ends ever. So we know he had like one amazing piece, for a majority of it. But, if you're looking at a lot of the other, players that he played with, again, they weren't really anything like, oh man, we got a game plan for him, besides maybe Randy Moss, in that, short period of time where Randy was on the team when they went undefeated. But what happened? You ended up getting the cheat code with Randy Moss, and then you went undefeated and you lost, right, in the Super Bowl to the Giants. So, even though they went for the cheat code and Brady to Moss, it still didn't end up in a championship. So crazy to think that Eli Manning ended up getting 2. Minnie in the building. How are you? I mean, the last time that we've seen the Chiefs like this was maybe like in the Alex Smith era, and again, Alex Smith, had a few years where they were pretty good, but I mean, obviously the Chiefs that we're seeing here, it's like, we haven't seen them play like this, pre-Mahomes, not in the Mahomes era, not this bad. And Stroud gets tripped up. Chris Jones. And the clock runs out, and that is halftime. 34 points with Hurts and Rashee Rice. Well, I don't even know if we're going to get any points out of KC, but hopefully Hurts will get you some points tomorrow in the game. 30-minute walk. Get that exercise. I usually do about 5 miles a day, so I usually do 3 30 to 45-minute walks a day. It's not 10 degrees here, so, stay warm out there, but it's always good to be able to, get the exercise and obviously the crisp, fresh air. 10 degrees, that's definitely pretty cold. All right, halftime will be over sooner than you know it. We got 12 minutes to go. And that's one thing I really like about the NFL, that halftime is 12 minutes, not like 20 to 30 minutes where it feels like, on college football. Yeah, hopefully we can get you some yards, or, if they do get a touchdown, hopefully it'll be for Rice for you. Appreciate you. Stacks, Rex with the little Cactus Jack. Bang, bang. Minnie with a tour. Appreciate you. $2 holla on the Dono train. All right, Jolly. How was bartending today, Minnie? How's the weather? I mean, obviously it's, 10 degrees today, but how has it been lately? Have you guys been able to stay open, with the weather and everything? $10-0 Houston. Like, sub, comment, share. If you haven't smashed that like button yet, please do. Help us get to 100 likes, 100 on the Dono train. And 5 to 15 subs. Let's get it, baby. All right, I'm going to go check up on my pup here real quick to see how she's doing. And I'll be back in like a minute. Just got to see how she is doing there. Christmas parties and corporate buyouts. And that means tips for Minnie. And I know you love that. All right, 10-0 Texans. And again, I'm going to take a quick peek to see if she is still sleeping or not. My Paisley pup. I'll be back here in just a moment. All right, I'm back. The pup is awake, laying down on the bed and sprawled out, all comfy. So she's doing good. She's looking forward to the late walk that we do. Obviously late here, 9, 10 o'clock after the game is over. And usually that's going to be the best walk. And that way I don't have to see anybody. And it'll just be me and her in complete darkness. And don't have to worry about any people out there or any other dogs. And hopefully, before we get into the walk, that Kansas City can get on the board. Because again, a 6-6 record with 5-1 at home, 0 at halftime. And again, we know how good the Texan, defense is. And, defense wins games, defense wins championships. Again, CJ Stroud coming back has definitely given them a lift. But the one, matchup they can exploit pretty much the whole game is Nico Collins. And they did 2 deep throws, one in the first quarter, one in the second quarter. And if I'm Houston, I'm doing that in the third and the fourth. Now, obviously with a 10-0 lead, you're going to run the football with Woody Marks and Nick Chubb to bleed the clock, because that's what good teams do, right? You find a way to bleed the clock, but you can't just, play cute. You have to make sure that you're still at times, trying to exploit, the weakness, which is going to be the secondary for the Chiefs. And, at this point, I hope the Chiefs can get on the board, and the game is only, 10-0, but just weird to be able to see a team that was so dominant year in and year out to hit a wall in 2025 like this. And again, there's definitely are going to be some changes that are made, and they should have fired Nagy, the OC, years ago, but maybe this will be finally the reason that they can fire him, because they're going to miss the playoffs. So Oregon State's failed season. Oh man, I'm a Duck fan through and through, but I feel for the Beavers. I feel for like the Cougars. Just those are the only 2 teams that were left, in the Pac-12, and yeah, it's rough, man. Again, if you end up losing your coach, you lose all the recruits. Nobody wants to go there. You play bad teams and you can't even beat them. It's going to take a long time for Oregon State to be relevant again. Now with the Cougs, they still have talent. And they're going to still win a few games here and there, but yeah, not ideal, and, obviously the Civil War rivalry, it doesn't really mean anything anymore, based on where Oregon is at and, where Oregon State is at. But as far as the college football playoff, Notre Dame should have made it, and Alabama should have been out with 3 losses, but it shows you the bias that you have in sports, when you end up having anyone in a committee that's voting, for certain things. You're definitely, voting based off the reputation of the school, even though Saban is no longer there. And then you obviously saw a few teams that decided that they don't even want to participate now in bowl games, which is a shame, based on what the voters did. And so I feel like the college football playoff is good in certain respects, but they still need to tweak it and add more teams. But also it's bad because now you're seeing more teams opt out of a bowl game, like Notre Dame, because they didn't get into the top 12 when they should have. And, obviously it's about greed and it's about money, when you play these games in college football for these, universities. But I was kind of looking forward to watching Notre Dame in a bowl game and, doing some coverage on some of the, bowl games and whatnot, which we still will. But the best part about it is at least Oregon's got the easiest path, like Ohio State did last year. So, JMU, Texas Tech, Indiana, and then in the championship against Ohio State or Georgia. So as long as Oregon plays Oregon ball, we're going to have a chance to potentially get there. And congratulations to the Indiana Hoosiers for winning the Big Ten championship over Ohio State yesterday. That was huge. And it shows you, that makes Oregon look even better, since we, lost to them in, Autzen, which, that was our only loss, but top 10 in offense, top 10 in defense, top 10 in special teams. And Indiana used to be a basketball school in college, and now they're, the kings of college football for now. But, definitely Oregon wants payback for the loss earlier this year, and Oregon wants payback for Ohio State from what happened, in the playoff last year as well. So hopefully that will happen. Playoff picture: Denver, New England, Jacksonville, Pittsburgh, Buffalo, Chargers. Colts aren't going to make it. And, Houston will probably end up getting that spot. So, the Colts will start going on a downward slope. The Texans are going to be in, and there's a good chance that you'll get the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Houston Texans in the playoffs this year. But everyone else, that's sitting there, you just swap Houston for Indy, and that looks like that's what's going to be for the AFC. And then the NFC is much deeper, and I'm definitely excited to see where that kind of plays out as well. Eagles, Bears, Packers, Lions, Rams, Seahawks, Niners, and then obviously you have to let someone make it, between the Buccaneers and the Panthers. Same thing kind of goes with the Steelers and the Ravens. AFC North and the NFC South are fucking terrible. No one wants to watch the Steelers or the Ravens. Maybe the Bengals would be the most entertaining if we're really being honest with Joe Burrow, right? That to me, that would be. Now, if the Ravens were good this year, then I would normally say Ravens, but they're not good this year. They're kind of like the Chiefs. They're just not good, but nobody wants to watch Pittsburgh. Nobody wants to watch the Ravens, based on how they played this year. Nobody wants to watch the Bucs or the Panthers. And if you had to choose one team out of those four, maybe Carolina would be, even though people aren't, fully on board with them just yet. But, I've watched quite a few of their games this year. And, anytime you have a team that's got defense, again, those are going to be the teams that you want in the playoffs. Yeah, Notre Dame wants money, but again, I don't think they're going to join a conference. Obviously, the conference to join would be the Big Ten, but I don't think they want the competition, against Ohio State and Michigan and Oregon and Penn State. And, I don't think that they don't want to get into that. And again, if Notre Dame would join the Big Ten, would they be a top 3, top 4 team every year? You would assume they would. But again, if you play USC and some of these other teams, Notre Dame, could end up being a lot lower, being in the Big Ten, assuming that they can be a top 15, top 25 team for a majority of the year. But if you end up joining the Big Ten, there's a chance in certain years that you're not even ranked. You might go like 7-5 instead of going like 10-2, based on how many teams are in the Big Ten. And we already know some teams are going to be good. Some teams are going to be pretenders, but again, if Notre Dame were to, come, to the Big Ten, it wouldn't really be in their benefit. It would make the matchups a little sexier with the rivalry with USC. That would be cool. Oregon, and Notre Dame playing, pretty often would be cool to see. But, I don't see them joining a conference. And if Notre Dame were to join a conference, they probably would join one of the easier ones. So that way they could be the top dog every year. Like if they join like the ACC, right? Then they would be like the top dog every year. And then, you know what I'm saying? So again, like what would be the spot that would be, would be the best for college football? It would be the Big Ten for Notre Dame. But again, if they were to join, they would go to like the ACC, and that way that they would guarantee themselves being one of the top 2 teams pretty much every year. Every once in a while, Miami, every once in a while, Florida State. But based on how Notre Dame, recruits, it would be safe to say, realistically, they probably would be the top dog, Clemson here and there, but if Notre Dame joined the ACC, they would probably be the top team almost every year. So, I would assume that's where they would want to go, the easiest path, rather than going somewhere difficult. So, I mean, you have to be, very confident, in your school, your coach, and your recruiting to join the Big Ten after, Indiana, Ohio State, Oregon, and you might be behind them, but you go to ACC, you might be number 1, but that, they definitely got it wrong, this year by putting Bama in and not, letting Notre Dame come in. But again, there's incredible bias, just like in anything, just like with the, Cal Raleigh and Aaron Judge. Cal deserved the MVP this year, did something that no catcher has ever done, and we still couldn't get him to win, So, there definitely is always going to be a bias against the West Coast, and that's just unfortunate. You get a lot of people in the Midwest and the East Coast and the South that don't stay up late to watch the West Coast teams, even if they're really, really good. And they just assume that teams in the Midwest and the East Coast and the South are better. Even if teams in the West Coast are undefeated or they have a loss and they're really, really good, it just seems like there's this narrative, that they just don't want to give credit. Like the last time, Midwest, East Coast, and South, like voters and fans, gave credit to the West Coast, the last time was probably when Reggie Bush was on USC. And that was a long time ago.
So, there definitely, are going to be people that give Oregon and a few of the other teams like Washington last, year, and year before with like Michael Penix Jr., obviously you're going to get a little bit of love, but again, you have to be able to understand where the bias is. So. Yeah, and obviously not making the college football playoff, Yeah, very petty, and whatnot. So I feel like, again, the college football playoff is good in certain regards, but also it ends up kind of hurting college football because we already got 3 teams that have opted out of bowl games. And I guess if you're not playing in a bowl game that means something, then, why are we playing? So, but again, you're doing it for money, you're doing it for the fans, and a chance for those players to have one more game for the scouts to be able to make a good impression. So that way you can go to the NFL, and again, their response will be, well, we don't want guys to get hurt, but yeah, kind of a petty, selfish move, but it is what it is. All right, Houston's going to get the second half kickoff here. Yeah, Sug? Is that like sub? Or is that like snuggle? A sub or a snuggle? Mini needs the points in fantasy. But even if he doesn't get in the end zone, just a couple of big plays, and then obviously if Jalen plays well, that could help. 10-yard penalty there after the Butker kick. First down and 10 at the Houston 17. 100 yards and a TD. I mean, hell, at this point, Kansas City's having a hard time even getting a fucking first down, but we will pray for you. And if it doesn't happen, hopefully Jalen will play well on the road tomorrow for you. Well, JMU is going to get blown out by Oregon. You already know that. And Tulane will probably get blown out too, I mean, I like the path that Oregon has, and, we have a chance to get payback, and again, I would love to be able to see them in the Natty, especially with the, the way the Mariner season ended. I got to be able to see one of my teams do something. And Marks runs right into Nick Bolton, loss of 4, second down and 14 at the Houston 13. Plus, JMU's going to Autzen. You ain't winning there. I mean, you got to be a very, very good team like Indiana this year to beat a team like Oregon and Eugene. Like, it's not a place where a lot of people can come in and win. Very, very passionate fan base. Shotgun set, Stroud going to Woody Marks on the check down and complete. Third down and 14 at the Houston 13, and you can definitely tell that Spags yelled at all of the players, on defense, and you're starting to see the defense finally come alive for the Chiefs, but that doesn't really help Patrick Mahomes and his arm. But again, if you can get points off your defense, that might be the only thing that will keep the Chiefs in this game, is getting points, fumble for a touchdown, a pick six, a block punt, a block field goal. It's not looking too good here early. Shotgun set, Stroud going deep to Xavier Hutchinson and complete. Oh yeah, Spags definitely brought out the belt. Lined up each player one by one. Gave him a beating. A little spanking. We got a few Chiefs fans on the channel. We haven't had anyone show up yet today. Probably because they're at 0 right now and they're probably too angry, but we'll see if we end up getting Odin or Chief Will Chief coming in. I mean, once they score a field goal or a touchdown, that might be the key, but fourth down and 14 at the Houston 13. And Tommy Townsend, the former Chief, with the punt. And that's fair caught by Xavier Worthy. First down and 10 at the KC 44. He's usually here. Oh, you're good. Salute to you getting the exercise out there. Shotgun set. Mahomes goes deep. Hollywood Brown is there and caught. First down, Chiefs. One of the big plays of the game. Here with Mahomes to Hollywood Brown. And a nice catch there by Hollywood. First down, Kansas City. There you go. We'll see if you can end up getting something here for Rashee Rice. Nice 35-yard pass by Mahomes. Good blocking up front for the Chief O-line. That's one of the first times that we've seen the O-line be able to sustain Will Anderson Jr. and Danielle Hunter. Shotgun set. And Brashard Smith, 7-yard run. Second down and 3 at the Houston 14. Shotgun set. Kareem Hunt off that left tackle for 2 yards. Third down and 1 at the Houston 12. And obviously, you would assume that they'll be able to get 3, but Butker already has a missed field goal. So I'm not sure if they're in mode in the third quarter to be like, we're not going to go with, Butker, because again, we've seen Butker miss a kick and they'll go right back to him. So, I mean, at this point, you need points, even if it's only 3. Third down and 1, 2-yard run there by Kareem Hunt. First down, Chiefs. First and goal at the Houston 10. Kareem Hunt running up the middle with a 3-yard gain. Jalen Petrie, who had the interception in the first half with the tackle. Second down and 7 at the Houston 8. Now, if you were able to run like a jet sweep, or like a reverse to Rashee Rice, that could work. But they're definitely not really trusting Mahomes with his arm at the moment. Said, feed that side dish. Shotgun set, Mahomes, and complete. Third down and 7 at the Houston 8. Xavier Worthy or Rashee Rice could end up running a jet sweep or a reverse or something like that. But the problem is that the offensive line already has a few injuries. And the Texans got one of the best defenses in the league with Denver. So if you were going to run that play, it probably wouldn't work. So that's probably why we're not seeing it, because they have such good pressure off the edge on both sides. Danielle Hunter on one side, and then Will Anderson Jr. on the other. Third down and 7 at the Houston 8. And Mahomes scrambling towards that left side. 6-yard gain. Fourth down and 1 at the Houston 2. And you would assume this will be like a tush push with Mahomes, and they might be able to get in the end zone that way. And again, that's crazy. Like, the biggest asset for the Chiefs, for Patrick Mahomes, is not his arm anymore, it's his legs. I mean, unless you ended up doing like an underhand throw to Kelsey, which they've done that, quite a bit before. But Kelsey's been such a non-factor this season. I mean, fourth down and 1 at the Houston 2. I wouldn't be running a QB sneak unless you have the proper guys, but they have no choice. They're running shotgun set. And there it is. Hunt up the middle. Touchdown, Chiefs. Big touchdown there. And again, that definitely could have been stopped. But that second effort by Kareem Hunt gets him in the end zone. 10-6, Houston. Extra point incoming by Harrison Butker. If Danielle Hunter wraps up, that's not a touchdown. And again, if you're going to hit him, you got to wrap up. Extra point is up and good by Butker. And as bad as the Chiefs have played, they're only down by 3 and have a chance still to win. So, well, at least we have a close game now. I mean, even though it was close at 10-0, but even though they were up 10-0, it felt like 20-0, just based on how, not efficient, Kansas City has been, not only in this game, but all season. But they definitely get the big touchdown in the second half. 10-7, Houston. $9:52 left in the third quarter, 10-7 Houston. All right, we'll see what Houston does here on their next drive. Obviously, going deep, is something they need to continue to do, because if they just try to run it with marks, and they just try to win by, bleeding the clock out, based on Kansas City and kind of what they do at home, that won't be good enough. They're still going to have to exploit that secondary. And as long as we get a few deep throws to Nico Collins, you would assume the Houston Texans will win. Shout out to my boy Brooks Beats with the best beats on YouTube. 10-7 Texans. And we got the Eagles going against the Chargers tomorrow. And that will be what will be on tap for the stream on Monday. And I think Buccaneers and Falcons on Thursday night. And then, as we get into the schedule, let's look at the schedule for next week. So we got Falcons and Buccaneers on Thursday, and then it'll be Vikings and Cowboys on Sunday night, Dolphins and Steelers. So not really the greatest matchups, but we'll see where it goes. Butker kicks off, 65 yards, touchback to the Houston 35. All right. Chief defense stepped up finally, as well as their offense here in the third quarter. But will they be able to sustain it? We will see. First down and 10. Handoff to Woody Marks. 2-yard run over to that right side. Second down and 8 at the Houston 37. 9:52 left in the third quarter. 10-7 Texans. Get that ball to Nico Collins. Or Dalton Schultz. Or Christian Kirk. You got options. What's going on, Minnie? I get more when people do Venmo or when they do Cash App. If you do Cash App and Venmo, I'll get like 98% of it. But if you end up doing a super chat, I only get a percentage, so it's like, for example, if someone donated $100 through like Venmo or Cash App, I would get probably like 98 of the 100. But if you donate through the super chat through YouTube, and if you donated 100, I probably would only get like 65 of it. So that's why I have to work so hard to try to make up the difference and whatnot. So, they take, like 30, 35%, from the amount. So obviously when you end up doing, Cash App and Venmo, it's kind of preferred, but, some people don't have Cash App and Venmo, and, whatever is comfortable, obviously if anyone is willing to, support me in my dreams so I can continue to do this, for the rest of my life and take care of my pup, it's, greatly appreciated and whatnot. As that pass is incomplete there by CJ Stroud. Intended receiver is Nico Collins, but they take Google and YouTube take a very high percentage, through super chats. So they get rich just based off that alone. Yeah, I mean, again, if it was, like 80%, through, that might be a little bit more, respectable, based off streamers and whatnot. But when you're only getting like 65%, it definitely hurts a little bit. But, but it is their platform. But, obviously they know what they're doing. So, but I think 80%, would be a fair amount for, streamers would agree. But, when you're going like double that, not ideal, but it is what it is. So no need to be sorry. Anything that is done, on any platform, whether it's a super chat or Venmo or Cash App, it's very greatly appreciated. So got a flag on the play. Illegal block in the back on the return by Edwards from the Chiefs. And timeout is called. Yeah, no worries. I mean, it's a good question to ask, and again, most people have no idea, they assume that, it's, you're getting a lot of it, but, illegal block above the waist. And we're going to a commercial break. First down and 10 at the KC 4. And it's been pretty light, since baseball season ended, if I'm being honest. It's been kind of difficult, for what happened in November, and December hasn't been too kind, but I'm hoping, before the year is up, we'll get a few more people to show some support and love. And then we still got January and February, to go through, and, we'll have some football to do at that time. And then obviously once we get into baseball season, in March, April, then we'll be good to go, at that point. But I'm definitely sitting, in a point now for, 3 or 4 months where it could be better, and, I don't want to struggle and whatnot, but, all I can do is, do my best and, hope that people appreciate the hard work that I'm doing. But, Cash App is on the bottom of the screen in the ticker. You'll be able to see it there. So the Cash App, as you see, $ORION and then NWSF. And then if you have Venmo, it'll be at my first name hyphen last name. Those would be, the ways that it can go. But, it's like, you don't want to just get supported, during baseball season and then no one supports you after that. So, or very few people. So it would be nice to be able to get more people to show love. And, I get it. Some people that are Mariner fans, they may not be, into football, or they have other things that they're doing and whatnot. But, this is a year-round job for me. So it's, I've been doing this for 13 years. This is my 9th year on YouTube. Next year will be my 14th year, my 10th year on YouTube next year. So hopefully we'll get more people to show love, and and obviously it's kind of lead by example. I think a lot of times people are waiting for someone else to do it, and then again, if everyone's got that mentality, well, someone else will do it, someone else will donate, but then what happens if that next person doesn't do it? And you don't want to be in a position where you're working hard and no one is supporting you. So appreciate you, my guy. I would assume so. I would assume Venmo and Cash App work from Canada. I can look it up on Google real quick, or if you want to look it up on Google real fast and whatnot, but I'm pretty sure it will. Thank you, Jolly. I can get you some Justin Jefferson photos if that's what you want to see. Little check down to Kelsey. Thank you so much, man. And again, nothing is worse when you're putting in your time and your energy and your effort and, not getting, certain type of result in return. But thank you guys so much. Stacks, Racks with a little Cactus Jack. Bang, bang. $30 dono NC Jolly. Thank you so much. And again, I don't need to be, rich. All I need to do is to be able to do the basics, like live, be able to take care of my pup, buy dog food and, regular dog, materials. So that way she has a good life, being able to pay the internet bill, the streaming fee, basic stuff like that. So 3-yard run there by Kareem Hunt. Barnett in there with the tackle. 3rd down and 1 at the KC 13. Appreciate you, man. Oh, looks like Cash App and Venmo do not work in Canada. They're US based. You guys have Interac, eTransfer, PayPal Canada, apps like Coho or Wealth Simple Cash. So it looks like Mini. There is no other alternative. It seems like for Canada and for the United States, they're separate. So, but again, anything that you do, that you can afford through extra tips that you get, or just being a kind person, is definitely appreciated. I just looked it up. Mahomes, plenty of time, wide open. And Xavier Worthy with a nice catch there, 23-yard pass. 1st down, Chiefs. Move the chains. Appreciate you, Jolly. Appreciate Megan, Jolly, and Minnie. Means a lot, and again, it's like, it takes a lot to be able to, put this show together. Some people don't realize, even making a thumbnail, doesn't, that takes like 30 minutes to an hour, sometimes longer, and then I got to go through, the preparation with the tags and, set up everything, with the music and, some streamers, they just hit start stream and that's it, when you're just watching them. But, for others, it's a little bit more complex. 2nd down and 10 at the KC 38. Yeah, I mean, again, you go from where, I started, the channel to where we're at now. We definitely have come a long way. And honestly, the only reason I stopped doing reaction videos is just lack of, views and support. Doing reaction videos takes time and takes effort. So it's like, if I was going to get like 1,000 views or more, on every video, then I would do it. But if I'm going to be spending, hours and then I'm getting, like 100 views or 300 views, it's just not worth it, and so that's why, I kind of scaled back on some of those things. So now, do I enjoy doing reaction videos? Yeah, they're fun to do, but based on the time and the energy and the effort, it has to make sense for me to do those, and if I'm not having consistency in the support, then, sometimes you got to give it up. And throw to Travis Kelce, incomplete. 4th down and 4 at the KC 44. Yeah. Plus, I feel comfortable. I mean, I pretty much can do anything, baseball, basketball, football, hockey, obviously doing baseball and football are going to be my favorite, to do. And again, I want to be able to do more basketball and hockey, but there's just not enough support, so I can't do them, because again, it would just burn me out, if I'm going to be, trying to stream every day and then I don't get that many people to show up and nobody's donating, and I'm spending all this time and energy, I need to make sure my mental health, stays sharp, and again, if you do too many, streams with no donos or lack of support of people showing up, it can wear on you, and even though someone like me that's been a vet, that's been doing this for a long time, that still is something that affects me, not on the daily and whatnot, but I have to make sure that, I'm very careful with my time and my energy. So. Plus, I feel like a lot of streamers, that are on YouTube are very biased, are only about their team, their players, their games, and they only care about their stuff, and, they don't really genuinely care about, the other, great players in the league of whatever sport they're covering. They might say they do, but you can definitely tell, that who's biased and who's not. So, and I'll never change, no matter how big we get, on the channel, I will always be the same person that I was when I started. So. Yeah. I mean, we did rugby, we did soccer, a little bit of everything back in the day. Oh yeah. Haters too. We got plenty of those. We got plenty of those. But again, it's like, if a lot of people don't understand like how much hard work and time and effort and energy, it takes to do a channel and to do it at a very high level, and again, a couple years back, I had very bad mental health, with depression and anxiety. And ever since the girlfriend, and I split up, with her, and we went, our own separate ways. And obviously I got the pup, my mental health has been much better. I haven't really had a bad day in 2 years. So I'm very blessed and thankful for that. Thank you so much, Minnie. It'll definitely go to you, Set Petco. Stacks, Racks with a little Cactus Jack. Bang, bang. Appreciate you. Another $5 holla on the donut train. And, I love, like, I've never been married. I don't have any kids or anything, which is, maybe rare, for, certain individuals in this time and age, or maybe it's something that's a little bit more popular now and whatnot. But, I love my pup, and, I've never really had that unconditional like love before. And, it's like pretty much like I have to be the dog father. And, I will definitely go above and beyond, for my pup. And, when you can, give everything that you got, your heart and soul, to like a cat or a dog or whatever your pet is, you can definitely see the results on the, what you get in return after all that love that you pour in. Throw to the sideline, incomplete. Appreciate that, Minnie. But, whether it be bones or treats or a new ball or a new rope, or, stuff to keep her, breath fresh and clean, and, a Pet Lab Co. with the powder that I, sprinkle on her food, which is usually pretty expensive, or even greenies, stuff like that is definitely not cheap. So I am married to you guys. I'm committed to my pup and you guys, the two most important things in my life. Hand off up the middle. And Woody Marks, no gain. Carl Laftis there with the tackle. Third down and 10 at the Houston 12. (10-7) Houston. Shotgun set. Stroud going deep to Christian Kirk. Incomplete. Fourth down and 10 at the Houston 12. Where was Kirk's? I want to see where the feet were here on the replay. I mean, Kirk catches it, it looked like. Let me see. Oh, no, it hit the ground. Good call. Kirk came up like he caught it, but... Oh, it's wine o'clock. And Tommy Townsend with the punt, 36 yards. First down and 10 at the Houston 48. All right, 10-7 Houston. We'll see if Kansas City can get something going on this drive. 4:35 left in the third quarter. Sack line. Yum, 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 yum. Hopefully Kansas City will get in the end zone for you with Rashee Rice. It's possible. 4:35 left in the third quarter. 10-7 Houston. Jolly, what do you want? You want some Justin Jefferson photos? Yeah, unfortunate that Cash App and Venmo are only United States options. So looks like maybe the only alternative that both of us use would be PayPal. But again, not everyone's got a PayPal account, so. Get some photos loaded here for you. Swag. And Mahomes incomplete to Tyquan Thornton. Second down and 10 at the Houston 48. The Burrow, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson days. Crazy like how they had Burrow, Chase, and Jefferson. Like you're probably never going to see anything like that ever again. You know, a top 5 quarterback and 2 top 5 wide receivers all on the same team. I mean, that was one of the best teams ever constructed. That LSU squad, and they even had Clyde Edwards-Helaire at running back, even though he didn't pan out, for the Chiefs. But obviously Jetta, Chase, and Burrow sure as hell did. Second down and 10. Mahomes. Rashee Rice. There you go. 7-yard pass. Third down and 3 at the Houston 41. Minnie says, that's okay, but I need a hell of a lot more. How many points do you need? Like 34 between Hurts and Rice. So essentially, you're going to need Rice to get you at least 10 minimum. And then you're going to need, 24 out of Jalen? And Jalen's going to be on the road, not at home. So, but, it's possible that Jalen could end up getting a couple touchdowns through the air and one on the ground. Mahomes, shotgun set, scrambling, gambling, and a nice 15-yard run. First down, Chiefs. And I said this at the beginning of the game that Mahomes' biggest weapon is his legs, which is kind of a crazy thing to say, but based on the game that we've watched so far, it's true. He just doesn't have the same, kind of accuracy with his arm as he starts to go towards the sideline with a little bit of a wobble there. Hopefully he's all right. Hand off to Isaiah Pacheco. Off to that right guard, 2-yard gain. Second down and 8 at the Houston 24. But everything on the playoff picture, the only change is the Colts will not make the playoffs, and I think the Texans will. So everything else, Denver, New England, Jacksonville, Pittsburgh or Baltimore, but I guess Pittsburgh maybe. By default, someone's got to win that. I would prefer Cincinnati, but because I like Burrow, but not that I don't like Lamar, but that Raven team is very inconsistent. I mean, it's kind of a lose-lose situation for the Bucs and Panthers and the Steelers and the Ravens, but 6-yard run by Mahomes again. Third down and 2 at the Houston 18. I don't think we've seen Mahomes run this much ever in a game. Yeah, there's quite a few teams in the AFC that aren't really legit. I mean, obviously the Colts were legit before Daniel Jones fractured his leg and then ended up having the season-ending injury in the other. Denver's legit. The Patriots are legit. The Bills are legit because they have Josh Allen and Cook. But then everyone below them, we'll see. Obviously the Jags and Texans have played pretty good ball. And then the Chargers. They usually do good in the regular season, but choke in the playoffs. But maybe this is the year that they win a game, or two. It's tough to say, but Chiefs going for a field goal here with Butker. 36 yards. Kick is up and good. And just like that, we have a 10-10 tie. And obviously we know the Chiefs have not looked good today, but, we're sitting at a 10-10 tie. Anything can happen. I think the Patriots and the Broncos are. I mean, I've watched almost every game that they've played, so, they're legit. I think, if you're going to name 3 teams that are legit in the AFC, Patriots, Broncos, Bills, and then obviously the Broncos got a great D. Obviously, the offense sputters with Bo Nix at times, but he's great in the fourth quarter when it matters the most. Patriots are the most well-rounded team in the AFC, offense, defense, special teams. And then obviously the Bills got Josh Allen and Cook. Their defense isn't very good, but when you have Josh Allen and you have Cook, you can win almost any game that you play. You're going to be right in it. But below that, then, you got the Jags and the Texans. I think that, could end up winning a game in the playoffs if they were to make it. And then below them, obviously would be like the Chargers and, kind of everyone else. So, I've watched a lot of these games, so I don't watch just one conference. I try to watch 3-4 full games, every weekend. So, I have a pretty good, breakdown of like who's legit and who's not. And obviously, if you're an NFC fan, you're, going to be, more, leaning towards the NFC. If you're an AFC fan, AFC. That's how it goes, And then obviously you got the Seahawks and the Rams, and the Eagle and the Packers and the Bears and the Lions, right? And even the Niners. And then you got the bottom feeders with the Buccaneers and the Panthers. So So it's much, much deeper team for team in the NFC. I mean, there's no doubt about that. But again, just because some of these NFC teams have good records, doesn't mean that they won't flop in the playoffs. Like the Packers, the Bears, the Lions, whether it be the Bucks or the Panthers or the Niners. Like you would assume everyone, potentially could flop. You would assume, except maybe for the Rams, the Seahawks, and I guess we'll wait and see if the Eagles, can get the job done. And, I guess you have to give them the respect for now, but we'll wait and see, how it all plays out. But the NFC is definitely deeper, team for team. But again, if you got good defense like the Patriots and the Broncos do, or if the Texans get in and they get hot, not to say that they're good enough to win the whole thing, but we'll see, how good those defenses are against whatever team makes it. The Eagles, the Rams, the Seahawks, if it's one of those three teams that makes the Super Bowl, we'll see who they match up against. So, and I feel like some of the quote unquote like pretender teams in the AFC, they actually got pretty good defense, like the Texans in Jacksonville. Really the only maybe pretender team might be the Chargers, but again, it is what it is. They're better with Harbaugh. And Marks runs towards that left end with no gain, and the Chiefs have sparked the momentum in the second half. Belt to butt is what happened in the locker room, and obviously you're starting to see a little bit of life from the Chiefs' offense and defense, and the Texans need to go back to what was working in the first half, and they need to be able to go to Nico Collins deep. Again, I know they want to run the ball, and try to like bleed the clock out, but you can't play like that against Kansas City or any team. You have to make sure that you're still staying true to yourself. Stroud getting chased and complete. The thing is, though, you have to look at what Bo is doing in the fourth quarter, and you also have to look at who does he have. He doesn't have J.K. Dobbins. You got a guy named R.J. Harvey, that obviously no one expects anything. The best option they have is Cortland Sutton. They don't really have a lot to work with. So, again, the defense is great. And if you're wondering, I don't really believe in Denver. Well, who the fuck do they have? They don't have anybody. Like, they made the playoffs last year with Bo had nothing to work with. This year, he's got nothing to work with. Evan Ingram can't catch passes at tight end. Cortland Sutton, and they got, Troy Franklin from the Ducks. But it's like, those aren't guys that, people get intimidated by, and they got R.J. Harvey, but those aren't really like household names. So you got to kind of respect them. Again, you may not be a believer, but again, think about if other quarterbacks had what Bo had, would they be able to have the same kind of record? And again, you have to be able to look at all, levels of the game. Denver has the least to work with out of all the elite teams. There's no doubt about that. So if they're able to win games, even though some of the games have been ugly, right? Well, there's a reason why they've been ugly, because he has no one to fucking throw to besides Cortland Sutton, honestly. And who does he have to hand the ball off to? RJ Harvey? Come on. You got to be able to look at it that perspective as well. It's easy to I don't believe in this team, but you have to really break down, like, what do they have, And again, if you don't really know what they have, then you're going to, you have to be able to understand what they have compared to, big hit. Night. He gets up, though. Wow. Rashee Rice gets fucking blasted. Yeah, and Harvey's a good player. Don't get me wrong. But again, this is like his breakout year, just, coming in, as a new player. And obviously, I like his style better than J.K. Dobbins. But it's like Bo Nix, you got Harvey, Cortland Sutton, Troy Franklin. Like, what do you expect? Do you expect the Broncos to put up 40 points a game with that? Of course not. And thankfully, their defense is elite. Otherwise, they wouldn't have the record that they have. Facts. But again, Bo is one of the best quarterbacks in the fourth quarter. And so, not every Duck quarterback is going to be great. Marcus Mariota had injuries. Dylan Gabriel as a backup, not good enough to be a starter. But at least we got Herbert and Nix to show that, hey, there's, some quarterbacks, from Oregon that can play in this league. So, I mean, if you put Drake May on the Broncos with what they have, they would say the same thing, you got to be able to look at, player for player, team for team. and that's going to be the end of the third quarter in a game that's knotted up. And salute to the Chiefs for not, having this game be 20-0. Thankfully they were able to wake up and be able to get a little bit of life. Mahomes has run the football a hell of a lot more than he normally does, which is something that I mentioned, that he's going to need like 50 to 70 yards on the ground for them to win this game. And, he's at 50 right now. So right in that perfect spot, a couple more first down runs, and they might be, able to win this game. Now, do the Chiefs, do they deserve to win this game? Probably not. But again, it's a tale of two halves. First half, Texans. Second half, Chiefs. But who's going to win the fourth quarter? And again, we'll find out if the Texan defense can get to Mahomes or not. And that might be the deciding factor in this game, as well as if CJ Stroud can get the ball to Nico Collins. You get the ball to Nico Collins, you win. If you don't get the ball to Nico Collins, you lose. I think it's pretty simple. So. But again, Broncos, Patriots, Bills, those are teams that are legit. And then again, the Texans and the Jags have pretty good defenses. So even if their offenses sputter a little bit with CJ Stroud or Trevor Lawrence, they're much improved this year compared to last year. And then obviously, the Steelers and the Ravens, they're all garbage. And obviously you got the Chargers. They have a pretty good record, but I don't know if anyone really believes that they can go on a deep run. And what does Herbert have to, work with? Not a whole lot. There's not a whole lot for there. I mean, you got Lad McConkey. There's a few pieces here and there. Keenan Allen is back to the team, but he's a little bit older. They had both their running backs injured with Omari and Hampton and Najee Harris. So again, to be able to have a good record when you don't have a whole lot to work with on offense, both quarterbacks with the Chargers and the Broncos. But the difference is the Broncos defense is one of the best in the league. Chargers don't have that same type of defense on that side. So we'll see. I think if like the Jags and the Texans played the Chargers, they could probably beat them. So even though the Chargers have a pretty good record, we'll find out tomorrow, if they are, good enough to beat the Eagles at home or not. And we'll see. Hopefully it ends up being a competitive game. But you can definitely tell offense, defense, special teams is always more well-rounded in the NFC. The NFC is incredibly deep this year. And you have more teams that you feel confident that could go deep, that could make the NFC Championship game. Like, let's be honest, like Seahawks, Rams, Eagles, Bears, Lions, if Packers, if any of those teams made the NFC Championship game, would you be surprised? No, you wouldn't, right? Maybe the only one that you would be surprised about would be the Niners. And obviously the Buccaneers and Panthers have no shot to go that far. But if the Niners were to get in, that would be the biggest surprise. But is it really a surprise when you have Shanahan and Saleh at offensive coordinator, head coach, and defensive coordinator? They probably have the best, tandem of coaches, and that's why they have that record. Intercepted! Wow! And Lassiter with the big pick. Why did Mahomes go deep there? Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Kamari Lassiter. Wow. Yeah, and big win against the Bears. The Bears are playing, pretty good football. And again, they're kind of limited, on who they have on offense as well. Caleb isn't really a guy that you can trust, game in and game out. But they run the ball pretty effectively most of the time and have a pretty good defense. And that's usually the kind of criteria. Do you have a good running game? Do you have a good defense? And then, then it goes towards like, okay, quarterback, wide receivers, tight ends. But really, it's like, can you run the ball well? And if you do, then obviously you probably have a pretty good O-line and then obviously D-line defense as well. But, run game, defense, usually if you have that, that's usually, the equation that's going to get you to a certain point in the playoffs. Marks with a 4-yard run. Nick Bolton with the tackle. 2nd down and 6 at the Houston 20. It's crazy. The biggest threat for Patrick Mahomes is his legs, not his arm anymore. I mean, I wish I had Kyle Shanahan and Robert Saleh on the Buccaneers. We would be so much better. It's 12 noon. You know what time it is? Time for a sack lunch. Yum, 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 yum. George Karlaftis. Wow. Loss of 11. Big hit. Chiefs are getting the crowd into the game. 3rd down and 17 at the Houston 9. They got to be able to get CJ Stroud in space. And instead of going, maybe with the deep routes, maybe crossing routes right in front, of the quarterback's eyes in motion. Because obviously now they're starting to blitz a little bit more with Spags. You're starting to see blitzes on second down and third down. Shotgun set, CJ Stroud, Jaden Higgins is there. First down, Texans. And just when it looked like the Chiefs were going to make a big play, CJ Stroud says, nah, not yet. I got you. And a great job leaning forward by Higgins to prevent the punt. Nice job. First down, Texans. Move the chains. And that saved the game possibly for Houston, at least on this particular drive. Nice job by the rookie, Jaden Higgins. Four Chiefs are there, but not enough. Shotgun set, CJ Stroud, Jalen Noel, 7-yard gain, second down and 3 at the Houston 33. But definitely more exciting, I think on the NFC side compared to the AFC side, regardless on, where your favorite teams are. But I think really what the question is those other teams besides, the Patriots, the Broncos, and the Bills, will they surprise anyone, if they get in? Can the Chargers, the Texans, the Jags, can they win a playoff game? I don't know about the Steelers or Ravens this year, but I think, can you win a playoff game if you're the Chargers, the Texans, or the Jags? We will see. One-yard run there by Woody Marks. Kind of surprised Chubb isn't getting a little bit more looks. Venmo will be on the bottom of the ticker there. So as you see it here, it'll be at, and then my first name, hyphen, last name, and that'll be on the Venmo. You see it on the ticker there on the bottom? Flag on the play. Big hit there. I appreciate it. Every dollar counts, man. And again, I just want to be able to, just survive, until we get back into baseball season. So, and I know once we get into baseball season, it'll start ramping up, but obviously that doesn't happen until March, April. So we still got a few months to go before we get there. So. That was an insane tackle there. Jalen Watson, maybe the best form tackle from a corner that I've seen all year. That was beautiful. And Tommy Townsend is with the punt against his former team. Fair caught by Xavier Worthy. And again, another reason why, you're not seeing a lot of the jet sweeps or like the trick plays by Kansas City. I think they have 3 offensive linemen out. They had 2, obviously coming into the game that were out. And then we had that injury from the other at the first quarter at the very beginning of the game. So they have Trey Smith with an ankle that was out. Jawan Taylor out with the triceps, and then Wanya Morris with the knee. So again, imagine if your favorite team had 3 offensive linemen out of 5. It's like, with Baker, when a couple of the guys out, and especially depending on how good they are, I didn't have, Tristan Wirfs, who's arguably one of the best offensive linemen in the game. And, that could have been the difference. Sometimes one guy, can be the difference on the line. And, it definitely hurt not having him today. Well, the channel was always, football heavy, but I finally, due to the Mariners' success, we finally broke out, and I was able to, get, some good movement on the channel and whatnot. The thing is like, for baseball, there's not as many people doing baseball because it's harder than football. You have to really know what you're doing, with that. So there's not as many full-time streamers that do baseball. There's a lot that do NFL. But not as much that do, baseball. So obviously the hard work, and also the Mariners' success was everything kind of came together, at the right time. And, we'll see where it ends up going and whatnot. So, and I don't, I want to be able to do NBA and NHL, but there's the support isn't there. I mean, hell, sometimes even when we do NFL and college football, the support isn't there, which is a little shocking, but again, I know there's millions of channels that are out there, and, some people are going to be loyal, to other channels, and that's completely fine and whatnot. But, I'm going to continue to grind. And, for me, I would rather work every day, but again, if I end up doing, filler streams of like NBA and NHL, and I'm putting in all this time and effort and energy, and I'm not getting, the result back, after a while, that's going to weigh on me, and I want to make sure my mental health is good, and I don't want to be depressed or have anxiety or, not be in a good headspace, because then that will, carry over into the streams and people will notice. So sometimes you have to take a step back, and, I would rather work 6-7 days a week, but, based on, doing the research and looking at the numbers, it looks like we're probably going to be working 4 days a week, maybe 5, until we get to baseball season, unless things change, dramatically. Mahomes towards the sideline and complete. Second down and 10 at the KC 22. Shotgun set. Mahomes. Short middle. Nothing is there. And complete. Throws it into the turf. Third down and 10 at the KC 22. Flag on the play. Flag is picked up. Third down. Shotgun set on third down and 10. Mahomes scrambles towards that left end, gets 9 yards. Sheldon Rankins with the tackle. And again, we've seen Mahomes run in this game more than maybe any game all season. And I kind of felt that was going to be the case with Will Anderson Jr. and Danielle Hunter. And again, he was going to have to run for 50 to 70 to win this game. And he's on pace. Right now, I think he's at 59 yards. So Mahomes on fourth down and 1. Why are you throwing? And complete. Terrible play call. It did. It shows. Let me see here. Let's see if it comes up. Thank you so much. I got it. TJ with a $5. Appreciate you. Yeah, terrible play call. And those are the play calls by Nagy that, he deserves to be fired. In a close game where you got dominated in the first half, you've won the second half, right? Even though Mahomes can't really throw the ball efficiently anymore, right? And you've been able to see him run for almost 60 yards already. You could have done a QB sneak with Mahomes and got that first down. And these, subtle mistakes, are very clear, and they're adding up, more and more, as you're moving forward. Like, you could have ran a QB sneak with Mahomes. You could have ran it up the middle, with Kareem Hunt or any of their backs. and got more than likely a yard, better than running a shotgun set play. It's like, and you have 3 offensive linemen that are out, and you're going to, and obviously getting a yard with a sneak or a halfback dive would be tough with 3 offensive linemen out, but it'd be even tougher, if you're going for the shotgun set play. Holy hell. But again, the Chief defense has been good, so they may end up getting this ball back with, no damage done. 1 yard run there by Woody Marks. And again, Woody needs to bounce it outside, and we haven't really seen him, really break out. A lot of his yards are like 1 to 3 yard gains. And again, that ain't going to get the job done either. Appreciate you, TJ. Stacks, Rex with a little cactus jack. Bang, bang. Every dollar counts. Appreciate you. 3rd down and 3 at the KC 24. And they bring the blitz. CJ avoids it. Keeps his eyes downfield. Wow. Jaden Higgins, the rookie from Iowa State. 1st down, Texans. Move the chains. Wow. If they end up getting a touchdown on this drive, this might be the game winner. Chris Jones just misses the sack lunch. Man in motion. A little play action fake. CJ, he says, I can run too. And a nice 3 yard gain there. 2nd down and 7 at the KC 13. Let them know, TJ. And luckily, football with college and the NFL will go into, February. So we're really only going to have about a month where it's going to be, a little challenging, even though it's been kind of challenging for November and December here. But, obviously once we go into that, we know we're going to get that much closer to baseball. And, hopefully they'll have some spring training games on in March for the Mariners that I can do. Nice run there by Woody Marks. One of the better runs that we've seen today. 8 yard run. 1st down, Texans. And they're knocking on the door. Chubb is out with an injury with the ribs. I was going to say, where is he? And now Woody Marks is banged up. Some real physicality on the defenses here today. Big hits on both defenses. Houston was great in the first half. Chiefs have been great in the second half to catch up. And again, who's going to end up winning the line of scrimmage, the O-line and the D-line, to give their quarterback enough time to get the job done. First and goal at the KC 5. Man in motion. Handoff up the middle. Touchdown, Texans! Wow! Dare Ogoborone. Ogoborone. Touchdown, Texans! Dare Ogunbowale. 5 yard tutty. That's a big one, too. Pressure is on now for Kansas City to match. Extra point by Kaimi Fairbairn is good. 17-10 Texans. Anything photo-wise you want to be able to see, TJ? You want some JSN or something? Let me know. Same thing goes for you, Minnie, if you're still here. Megan as well. See if I can squeeze in a few before the game ends. Jolly likes Jay Jetta, like myself. I even give you a throwback one from last year. Lockett's still there as well. All right, 17-10 Texans, less than 7 minutes to go. You know, the Chiefs definitely have a shot, you know, to be able to tie this up and, you know, potentially force overtime if, you know, that were to happen. But again, you know, Mahomes is going to have to run the football with his legs to get a few first downs on this drive. And we'll see if he ends up getting it. Kind of felt like he was going to need 50 to 70, you know, for them to win this game. And he's at 59. So he's right in the wheelhouse to be able to get that, you know, job done, but we will see. Hands off to Kareem Hunt on first down and 10, and a 6-yard gain. Bryant there with the tackle. Second down and 4 at the KC 41. Yeah, I mean, it's just crazy, like, you know, for having DK and Lockett all those years, and, you know, and obviously Baldwin, it feels like it's been, I don't even know, like how many years, you know, a long time, you know, but I've always have had a good reputation with good wide receivers. And, you know, you guys definitely got a very good one in JSN. Man in motion, Kareem Hunt up the middle. That didn't fool anybody. And that is no gain. Lassiter is right there. Third down and 4 at the KC 41. Like, sub, donate, comment, share. If you haven't smashed that like button yet, please do. Help us get to 100 likes, 100 on that dono train, and 5 to 15 subs. Good girl, lay down. All right, Paisley just came in. Mahomes, and throws it away, and complete. Fourth down and 4 at the KC 41. She misses dad. It's funny, like, you know, dogs have like an internal clock, you know, and she, you know, even though time is registered a little bit different for a dog rather than a human, she kind of has an idea of, generally when the game, should be over, when, I'm able to take her outside for a walk. Timeout Chiefs. And it's 4th down and 4 at the KC 41. And again, everyone will blame Mahomes, but again, when you got 3 offensive linemen out and a shitty offensive coordinator, sometimes shit like this happens, but again, I think it's just the dramatic downfall. It's like, to be one of the best teams year in, year out, Super Bowl contender, Super Bowl contender, Super Bowl contender, and then to be like 500, can't win a 1-score game, it's pretty wild. No touchdowns, 2 picks. I think, the real question is Mahomes' trajectory going downwards? Will he ever be good again? Or is this what we get, moving forward with the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes? I hope he can end up showing some flash, later in his career. I hope that what we saw isn't it, but, only time will tell. Especially if they get a better OC and a better offensive line, you would assume that he'll be able to, spark a little bit of that magic again. Mahomes? And complete. Golly. What happened to my hands? Mahomes gets crushed. Rice drops it. And now the Texans are going to take over. And looks like it's going to be a Texan win here momentarily. I mean, that's been the story of the Chiefs, though, all year, right? And when it rains, it pours. When they finally end up getting a play that could, keep the game going, an unexpected, drop. And again, I don't like seeing elite quarterbacks, hit a wall and then, play like this. And obviously the OC is not good. 3 offensive linemen that are hurt. But even when they had healthy offensive linemen, we've seen Mahomes play like this. So it's not just because of the coordinator and the linemen. Obviously that is an issue here today, but it's been, kind of a league long, schedule issue, from the very beginning of the year all the way to now. And in a matter of minutes, the Chiefs are about to go to under 500. And when's the last time the Chiefs were under 500? Like the Alex Smith era? It's been a minute. Looking at what do we got here? All right, so 12-4 in 2016, 10-6 in 2017, 12-4 in 2018, 12-4 in 2019, 14-2 in 2020, 12-5 in 2021, 14-3 in 2022, 11-6 in 2023, 15-2 last year, and they're now about to drop to 6-7. So I mean, this is going to be the first time in over 10 years that we've seen this dramatic collapse from the Kansas City Chiefs. Yeah, they're not making it. And plus, who would want to watch that in the playoffs? It's like watching the Buccaneers, except the Chiefs actually have a defense, but the offense stinks. The Bucs have an offense, but our defense stinks. Now, if we merged the Chiefs and the Buccaneers together, then we actually might have a pretty good team, but obviously, you got one strong piece and then the other piece is kind of weak. And it's like they got good players on the offense, but again, sometimes you got to rebuild. And normally, Rice and other receivers make that play, but, I mean, they've had great 10 years, and most teams, aren't going to, go that long, before having a bad season. They've been incredibly lucky with the coaching staff and the lack of injuries, to affect the outcome. But, this has been a very, very tumultuous, tough year, and it seems like it's not going to get any better. Timeout call by the Texans. See ya. We don't play that shit here. 17-10 Houston. Yeah, plus it gives a chance for others to be able to shine, right? I mean, everyone's been in the Mahomes shadow, besides maybe Allen and Lamar, being able to get a little love, and Burrow. And now we're starting to, get a little bit more love for some of these other teams. So, it's just like the Patriots, at some point, when you start losing pieces, things start to collapse. You're not going to be able to, and it's kind of crazy how good New England was. They normally, you're not going to be able to go 10 years and being great. And then New England did it for like 20, roughly. So 15, 20 years of, consistent football. But of course, if you end up having the same coach, and a majority of the staff staying relatively the same besides OCs and DCs, then that's what you get. 2nd down and 10, Marks runs towards that left side, bounces it outside, 3-yard gain. Connor with the tackle. 3rd down and 7 at the KC 38. That man in the building, what's good? All good things come to an end. But again, sometimes you take one step backwards to go 10 steps forward. But I hope that Mahomes, isn't done. I hope that, this is not what we're going to see for the rest of his career. I hope that we get to see, a good quarterback again, next year. But, only time will tell. Yeah, not surprised. Top 10 in offense, top 10 in defense, top 10 in special teams. They beat the Ducks in Eugene. And they were lucky that the Ohio State kicker, missed a field goal. It definitely was a defensive battle, kind of like this. And, shout out to Indiana. They deserve it. But again, winning the Big Ten championship like Oregon did over Penn State last year doesn't mean anything unless you win the whole thing, right? So congratulations to Cignetti and obviously the Hoosiers, but the job is far from over. And I'm really hoping to get payback on them in the college football playoff. JMU, see ya. Texas Tech, see ya. Indiana, see ya. And then playing Georgia or Ohio State in the Natty, see ya. Hopefully that'll happen, but only time will tell there. The crazy thing is, it's not like Mahomes is played bad in like one game. He's played bad in like many games. That's kind of the thing. But again, crappy OC, injuries on the O-line, that'll do it. Stroud, floater, incomplete. And also, not having that same rapport, with Travis Kelce, that's something that we haven't seen. Like, Brady always had Gronk, and they never like fell off. They were always playing on a high level. But like Travis Kelce, like, what does he do? The last couple of years, he's not really been the same player anymore. Whether that's a distraction with Taylor and everything else that's going in the game and his age and him getting up there, and whatnot. But you haven't really seen the same dominant Travis Kelce anymore. And not just this year, but, it feels like the last couple years. Oh, for sure. But the difference is if Mahomes has a dramatic drop-off, they're not going to see him in the same light as Brady. At the beginning of his career, after winning a few, it looked like, oh, this will be the next Brady. But if he falls off, this year and then every year after this year, they'll still celebrate, what he did, but he won't be in the same category as Brady. He'll be on that tier below. But this definitely gives them, a good excuse to fire Nagy, which they should have already done like 2-3 years ago. Mahomes incomplete, short right to Travis Kelce. And normally it's like you're getting big first downs with Kelce. Kelce's getting in the end zone. Hell, he can't even fucking catch a pass. Incomplete. 9 straight incomplete intercepted passes, longest streak in his career. So we're literally watching like the shittiest, of the shitty right now. But also 3 offensive linemen that are hurt and a shitty OC that has something to do with it too. 2nd down and 10. Mahomes. There we go. Oh, intercepted. And the game is over. Wow. Defense wins games. Defense wins championships. And speaking of Travis Kelce, Taylor might change her mind now. I mean, it's all, easy peasy lemon squeezy when you're winning Super Bowls, but. And, more times than not, that's an easy catch for Kelce, right? Where's the focus? Is the focus on Taylor or is it on the Chiefs? Doesn't look like it's on the Chiefs. And it will kind of stink, if the legacy of Mahomes and Kelce kind of goes on a downward spiral because they were so good for so long, and hopefully they'll be able to at least have, one more good year, together. But we know Kelce's getting close to retirement, who's been, hinting at it, that this might be his last year or maybe next year. But, I don't want to have a, lasting memory of Mahomes and Kelce playing shitty football, but all good things come to an end, I guess. 2-yard run there by Woody Marks. And it shows you, defense wins games, defense wins championships. Oh, yeah. I mean, the Colts aren't going to make the playoffs now. They were one of the top 3 teams with the Patriots and the Broncos, and they're not even going to make the playoffs now. They're going to go on a downward spiral, you would assume. And you would assume the Jags and the Texans will make it, and the Colts will not. So, and yeah, Ertz with the injury, Daniel Jones with the injury. I mean, any, injuries, that end up being season ending are terrible. Doesn't matter, what player, what team, but especially if they end up being good players, then it, really, really hurts. I mean, I would know, especially with my team. 2nd down and 8, 3-yard run there by Woody Marks. 3rd down and 5 at the KC 21. And again, another 1-score game that the Chiefs can't win. So the only 1-score game that they got to win was against the Colts in Week 12. They're about to be 1-7, right? They're about to be 1-7 in 1-score games. Normally the Chiefs are 7-1. So there's the difference. They can't close out games, and they, obviously the defense still, pretty good, holding the Texans to 17 at this point, but offense nowhere near what we're used to. That's crazy. They're about to be 1-7. So the complete opposite that what we're normally used to. We're normally used to seeing Kansas City win 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 games. And at this point, how many games will they win? I mean, are they going to win like 8, 9 games? They're definitely not making the playoffs. Yeah, it could be a 2-score game here in a moment. True. CJ, hands off. And then, and even if they get a field goal here, making it 20-10, would the Chiefs be able to at least get a field goal in garbage time to, keep it as a 1-score game? We'll find out. But I'll tell you what, the hardcore Chief fans, they're going to still be with this team, but the bandwagon Chief fans have hopped off that bandwagon, and they are no longer Chief fans anymore. Especially after watching this season. They won't hop back on. They'll jump ship to, wherever they want to go. Whether that's the Patriots or Denver or Buffalo or wherever or even jumping ship to the NFC. And we know Kaimi Fairbairn can hit a field goal here. 2-minute warning. I mean, the Chiefs had a pretty good second half, with all things considered. But, again, if Mahomes' biggest threat is his legs, chances are you're going to lose the game. But the bandwagon fans for the Chiefs had a hell of a run, right? They had a hell of a run. I've been a fan forever, But we know for some that was not the case, so. Like, sub, donate, comment, share. If you haven't smashed that like button yet, please do. Help us get to 100 likes, 100 on that dono train. And 5 to 15 subs. Let's get it. Bye-bye. Gained 2 subs since the last commercial break. 88 subs to go to 23,400. Yeah, well, he was already, contemplating retirement. So, and again, if he goes, Mahomes still has more in the tank left than Kelsey, but, how much more? Again, if they get some, offensive linemen that are better, and then you end up firing, your offensive coordinator, Nagy, which you should have already fired years ago. Not to say if they bring Bieniemy, as the main guy back or someone else, could we end up getting a better version of Mahomes? I mean, you have to assume it'll be better than this. But will it ever be as good as it was before? That's the question. Will the Chiefs ever make another Super Bowl? And the answer could be no. Their run might be over. So. And then another stat that's a little alarming, 12 for 30, 131 yards, no touchdowns, and 3 picks. That's Patrick Mahomes, first ballot Hall of Famer. That doesn't sound like Hall of Fame numbers to me. And I get it. The Texan defense is one of the best, ever, in this 2025 season for this season, with Denver, right? One of the best, statistically this season, but 0 touchdowns, 3 picks, 12 for 30. I hope Mahomes will bounce back, but I mean, there's a chance where, he may not ever bounce back. Third down and 4, loss of a yard by Woody Marks. 4th down and 5 at the KC 10. And honestly, when's the last time in recent memory or ever that you remember Mahomes going 0 touchdowns, 3 picks? I don't even remember, the last time I seen a stat line that bad. Wow. He's never had a game with 0 touchdowns and 3 picks in his career, ever, besides today. So, Chiefs got the Chargers, the Titans, the Broncos, and the Raiders. So you would assume that they'll lose to the Chargers and the Broncos. Can they beat the Titans or Raiders? You would assume that they could, but will they? They might even lose to the Raiders. Who knows? Texans got Cardinals, Raiders, Chargers, Colts, and the Texans could win every single one of those games. I mean, based on how the Chiefs have been playing lately, maybe the only game they win is the Titans. And if they play like this, they're not winning that game either. And we know the Titans are fucking terrible. That'd just be wild. Chiefs go 7-10 after going 10 wins or more for 10 years in a row. And Fairbairn's kick is up and good. And Mahomes is going to have 30 seconds to try to get into field goal range. But based on how shitty they've played, I don't even know if they'll even do that. You know, they might just say, fuck it. Yeah, this is the first time in 10 plus years that they're going to be below 500, more than likely. Yeah, who would have thought that, you know, we would see a year of football where the Ravens and the Chiefs are garbage, but I mean, that's, I guess, where we're at. Nice to be able to see some new teams be able to get a little love in pub, but unfortunate, you know, teams that we normally, you know, are watching that are, you know, typically consistent, like the Chiefs and Ravens, are going in the wrong direction. Nick Wright is about to switch teams, and all the other Chief fans, huh? Tough. And Thornton gets crushed. First down and 10 at the KC 30. Could be that. Could be Seahawks, Bills, Seahawks, Broncos, Seahawks, Patriots. I mean, you have to assume it's going to be one of those three teams, Patriots, Broncos, or Bills. The Bills are the only one that doesn't have a defense, though. I mean, they do have Josh Allen and they have Cook, but, I mean, you know, at some point, if you play a good defense like the Patriots and Broncos, it may not be enough. Mahomes spikes the ball. Second down and 10 at the KC 45. All good. Hopefully, you know, we'll have others that will be able to step up. I mean, every dollar counts. False start on the Chiefs on that O-line. Second down and 15 at the KC 40. Yeah, you know, they're obviously declining their bowl invitation. They should have made it. You know, Alabama shouldn't be in. You know, it should have been Miami and Notre Dame getting in and Alabama not, but it shows you how biased college football is. You know, Nick Saban is not coaching that team anymore, and they're still getting treated as Nick Saban is still coaching that team, you know? Sad. And they only put up 7 against Georgia, and then that's the team that you want, you know? Because they feel like, oh, they're going to get ratings if we put them in. But Notre Dame should have made it 100%. And Noah Gray. And that is it. Final score, Houston Texans 20, Kansas City Chiefs 10. And first time that we're seeing the Chiefs below 500. Wow. First time we've seen Patrick Mahomes go 0 touchdowns and 3 picks in his career. Whoa. And shout out to the Texan defense. You know, even on the road, it didn't faze them one bit. Love you guys, and I appreciate you guys very much. Shout out to all the individuals, Megan, Jolly, Minnie, Jolly, TJ. Appreciate you guys with all the love and the support. We will be doing the Eagles and the Chargers tomorrow. Looking forward to the battle of the 8 and 4s, both playoff teams. And we'll see how that one goes. You know, see if the Eagles can win a game on the road and if Herbert can actually beat a good opponent in 2025, even though he ends up having that minor injury. So we will wait and we will see. Seahawks, Rams, Eagles kind of feels like that would be. But again, you know, the Lions, you know, kind of shaky. Packers and Bears, you know, you still got to keep them in the conversation. You know, you never know. Injuries could happen, just like what happened with Daniel Jones. 1 minute you're in the playoffs with the Colts, the next minute you're probably not going to make the playoffs anymore. And again, if Darnold get hurt or Stafford or Jalen, then goodbye. All right. So if any of those quarterbacks go down for the Hawks, Rams, and Eagles, goodbye. You're not making it, to that point. So, we will see. But I love you guys and I appreciate you guys very much. Final score: Texans 20, Kansas City Chiefs 10. And I got one question for you. Who talk sports like us? Your boy Ryan, Northwest Sports Fanatics, and I'm out. Okay.